The auctioneer's hammer came down before I reached the open carriage house door, sold for $8,400. A few people clapped. Most just looked down at their bidder cards. The man in the second row smiled like he'd found something rare. On the table beside Greg, Herrera sat my shadow box. I could see the green edge of my retirement plaque. I could see the citations mounted behind the glass. The medals were arranged exactly as they'd been at my ceremony. Frances stood near the auction desk. She wore a black dress and Wayne's silver watch, my father's watch. She saw me and went completely still. Greg looked from her to me. "Can I help you?" I pointed at the table. "That sale can't be completed." The buyer turned around. Several other people did too. Frances took 3 quick steps toward me. "You need to leave," she said. I kept my voice low. "You sold something that doesn't belong to you." Her face changed. Not much. Her mouth tightened and one hand closed around the strap of her purse. Then she raised her voice. "This woman has been harassing me since my husband died." The room got quiet. I looked at the people sitting in folding chairs. Some of them had known my father for years. A few knew me. None of them spoke. Frances pointed toward the driveway. "Get off my property, Renee." Greg rested one hand on the shadow box. "Who are you?" "I'm Lieutenant Colonel Renee Dixon, retired. Those are my medals." That wasn't where this started. It started 2 years earlier on a rainy afternoon at Carlisle Barracks when my father asked if he could keep them. I'd just retired from the Army as a lieutenant colonel. I'd served 22 years as a logistics officer and completed 3 deployments. Dad knew all of that, of course. Still, he acted surprised when people stopped to shake my hand after the ceremony. He stood beside me in the reception room, holding a paper cup of coffee. "You never told me this many people knew you," he said. "I worked here, Dad. That's not what I mean." A colonel from my old command walked over and thanked him for coming. Dad straightened his tie before answering. I noticed, because he only did that when he was nervous. Frances stood several feet away. She was speaking with Caleb and checking her phone. She had married Dad 5 years earlier. They'd met at a community fundraiser in Carlisle. She liked clean counters, early dinners, and knowing who had been invited before she entered a room. We were polite to each other then. Not close. Not openly hostile either. After the ceremony, Dad followed me to my car. Rain dotted the shoulders of his blue suit. I had the shadow box under one arm. The retirement plaque and program were in a canvas bag. "Let me carry something," he said. "I've got it. I know you've got it. Let me carry it anyway." I handed him the bag. He looked at the shadow box. "Where are you putting that?" "I haven't decided. You've got an empty wall in your dining room. That wall is empty on purpose." He smiled. "Your mother would have put it over the television." My mother had been gone a long time. Dad could mention her without the whole day changing. I appreciated that about him. He touched one corner of the frame. "Let me put it in my study for a while." I thought he was joking. "You want my medals?" "I want to look at them. You've seen them. Not all together like this." I shifted the box against my hip. "Frances won't want Army things in the house. It's my study." That answer told me they'd already discussed the room. Dad looked back toward the building. Frances was waiting beneath the entrance awning. Caleb stood with her, holding an umbrella that covered neither of them properly. Dad lowered his voice. "Just for a while, Ren." I said yes. The next week, I drove to the house at 214 Walnut Street. Dad had cleared a space above the small bookcase in his study. I brought the shadow box, the citations, and the plaque. Before I left, I made an inventory. That might sound formal for something between a father and daughter. It wasn't about trust. The Army had trained me to document handoffs. Equipment moved, people forgot, and labels fell off. A signed sheet prevented arguments later. I listed each item. At the bottom, I wrote that they remained my property and were being displayed in Dad's study. Dad read it at his desk. "You think I'm going to sell your medals?" "No. You think I'll lose them?" "Possibly." He looked offended for about 2 seconds. Then he laughed. "That happened one time. You lost a lawnmower." I knew where it was. Caleb had it for 6 months. That means it was in the family. He signed the sheet. I signed beneath him. We made 2 copies. Dad slid his behind the shadow box before we hung it. I put mine in the records cabinet at my house. Frances watched from the hallway. "What's the paper for?" she asked. "Inventory," Dad said. She leaned against the doorframe. "Of medals? And the plaque." She looked at the wall. "It's a little much for this room." Dad picked up his level. "Then don't come in here." He said it lightly. Frances didn't smile. That was the first time I noticed how she looked at the display. She wasn't studying the medals. She was looking at the space they occupied. For the next 2 years, the shadow box stayed there. Dad sent me pictures whenever he changed something in the study. A new chair, a lamp he found at a flea market. Once, a terrible green rug Frances hated. The shadow box appeared in the background each time. I visited when I could. After retirement, I did contract planning work from home. Nothing glamorous. Mostly supply schedules, warehouse problems, and calls where 3 people used different names for the same part. My house was about 15 minutes from Walnut Street. I saw Dad for lunch most Wednesdays. Caleb joined us when his job allowed. He was 5 years younger than me, and better at making Dad laugh. He was also better at avoiding uncomfortable conversations. If Frances changed plans, Caleb adjusted. If she made a cutting remark, he pretended not to hear. He called it keeping peace. The last Wednesday, I saw Dad. We ate chicken salad sandwiches in his kitchen. Frances had gone to an appointment. Dad picked the celery out of his sandwich and left it in a pile. "You're 72, I said. "You can order something else." "I like chicken salad." "You clearly don't. I like most of it." He asked if I'd help with a veteran's breakfast in September. I said I would. Then he asked whether I still had the retirement program from my ceremony. It's in my file cabinet. "Bring me a copy next week." "What for?" "I want the names spelled right." "What names?" He folded his napkin and put it beside his plate. "I'm labeling things." I assumed he meant the photographs in his study. "I'll bring it," I said. There wasn't a next Wednesday. Caleb called me shortly after 6 on a Sunday morning. His voice sounded thin. "Ren, Dad's gone." I sat up in bed. "What happened?" Frances found him in the study. "Is she there now?" "Yes. I'm coming." "Wait." I already had 1 foot on the floor. "What do you mean, wait? She doesn't want people at the house yet." "I'm not people." "I know." "Then why are you telling me to wait?" He was silent. I put the phone on speaker and pulled on a sweatshirt. "Caleb." "She's upset, so am I know that." "No, you're saying it. That's different." He exhaled into the phone. "Give me an hour." I gave him 20 minutes. When I reached Walnut Street, Caleb's truck was by the curb. Frances's car was in the driveway. An ambulance was pulling away. I parked behind the carriage house and walked to the back door. My key didn't work. I tried it twice. Then Caleb opened the door from inside. He stepped onto the porch and pulled it almost closed behind him. His eyes were swollen. He hadn't shaved. "She changed the lock," I said. "Last month." "Why?" "I don't know." "You didn't think to mention it." "Ren, not now." I looked past him through the narrow opening. The kitchen lights were on. "Where's Dad?" "They took him." "Was he alone?" Frances was upstairs. She said she heard something fall. I put my hand against the door. "I need to see the study." Caleb blocked it with his shoulder. "She doesn't want you inside." For a second, I thought I'd heard him wrong. "Dad died this morning." "I know. In that house." "I know. And his wife sent you outside to keep his daughter off the porch." His face tightened. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make me choose sides right now." I took my hand off the door. "You chose when you closed it." The door opened behind him. Frances stood in the kitchen. She'd changed into black pants and a cream sweater. Her hair was brushed. That detail stayed with me. "Renee," she said, "this isn't a good time. When would be a good time? We're dealing with private matters." I looked at Caleb. He stared at the porch boards. Frances kept one hand on the door. "I'll call you when arrangements are made. I want to see Dad's study." "No." "Why not?" "Because I said no." Her voice stayed calm. That was how she did things. She made the first cruel statement sound reasonable, then waited for you to become the difficult one. I stepped closer. My father asked me to bring him something this week. I want to see what he was working on. Francis's eyes moved to my face. What thing? A ceremony program. I have no idea what you're talking about. That's why I want to look. She opened the door a little farther, but only so she could come outside. Caleb moved aside. Wayne's papers are part of his estate, she said. Nothing is leaving this house. I didn't ask to remove papers. You've always been very particular about what belongs to whom. There it was. At the time, I didn't know why she chose those words. I only knew she hadn't forgotten the inventory. I looked through the glass in the back door. From that angle, I could see part of the hall leading toward Dad's study. The study door was shut. Are my medals still on the wall? I asked. Francis didn't answer right away. Caleb looked at her. She folded her arms. Wayne's military collection is safe. He didn't have a military collection. You know what I mean? No, I don't. Her chin lifted. The items displayed in his study, they're mine. He considered them family property. I waited. Francis looked toward the neighboring house. A curtain moved in an upstairs window. She lowered her voice. We are not having this conversation on the porch. Then let me inside. No. Caleb finally spoke. Francis, maybe she could just check the wall. Francis turned to him. Your father died less than an hour ago. I know. Then stop worrying about objects. That shut him down. I could have pushed past them. I didn't. Instead, I took out my phone and opened the messages Dad had sent me. The latest study picture was from 11 days earlier. The shadow box was visible above the bookcase. I enlarged the image. The green edge of the plaque was still there. Dad's desk lamp showed the date on the newspaper beside it. I held the phone toward Caleb. This was there 11 days ago. I'm asking one simple question. He looked at the picture. Francis didn't. Is it still there? I asked. Caleb rubbed one hand over his mouth. I haven't been in the study. Why? Another silence. Francis stepped back into the kitchen. I'll contact you about the funeral, she said. Then she closed the door. The lock clicked. Caleb remained outside with me. What's going on? I asked. I don't know. That's not true. I swear, Wren. I don't know about the medals. That isn't what I asked. He sat down on the porch step. For a while, neither of us spoke. A delivery van stopped across the street. Someone carried grocery bags into the brown house on the corner. It felt wrong that Walnut Street looked so normal. Caleb stared at his hands. Dad and Francis were arguing about the funeral, he said. When? Friday night. About what? Who would speak? What would be in the program? Stuff like that. Did Dad say my name? Caleb looked up. He said you'd know what to do. That answer didn't comfort me. What did Francis say? She said she was his wife. She was. You know what she meant. I did. Caleb stood and reached for the door. Give her today. No. He stopped. I'll give her this morning, I said. Then I want access to the study. I can't promise that. I'm not asking you to promise for her. He waited for me to explain. I'm asking what you're willing to do. His eyes dropped again. That was my answer. I went home and made coffee. I didn't drink. Then I opened the records cabinet in my dining room. The inventory was exactly where I'd left it. Dad's signature sat beside mine at the bottom. The date matched the week after my retirement ceremony. Every item in the shadow box was listed. I scanned the page and saved it in 2 places. Then I put the original back in its folder. That was a small thing, but it settled my hands. At 9:15, Francis sent a family message. She wrote that funeral arrangements would be handled privately. She asked everyone to respect her decisions during a difficult time. I read it twice. Then I noticed Caleb wasn't included. I took a screenshot and called him. He answered on the second ring. What now? He asked. Check your messages. I've been checking them. Not from Francis. From me. I sent him the screenshot. He went quiet. Finally, he said, "She told me she made a family group." She did. Maybe she forgot to add me. She added 2 neighbors. He didn't answer. "Caleb, what happened in that house before Dad died? I told you." They argued. About more than the funeral? A cabinet door closed on his end of the call. "I have to go," he said. "Are you inside?" "Yes." "Go to the study. Francis is here." "I know." "Ren, don't take anything. Don't touch anything. Open the door and tell me whether the shadow box is on the wall," he whispered. "She'll hear me. Then let her. For once, Caleb didn't tell me to keep the peace." I heard his steps cross the kitchen. A door opened. Francis called his name from farther away. He kept moving. Then I heard the study door. Caleb stopped breathing for a moment. "What do you see?" I asked. His answer came quietly. "The wall is empty." "Don't touch anything," I said. "Just tell me what's missing." "The shadow box. The plaque, too." "What about the bookcase?" "It's here." "Dad's desk?" "Everything else looks normal." Francis called his name again. This time she sounded closer. Caleb whispered, "I have to go. Take a picture of the wall." "What?" "A picture. Then leave." I heard movement, followed by the soft click of his phone. Francis entered the room. "What are you doing in here?" she asked. Caleb didn't answer. "Caleb?" I wanted to see where he was. "This room needs to stay closed. Why are Renee's medals gone?" The question came out louder than he intended. Francis paused. I stood beside my dining table with the phone against my ear. She didn't know I was listening. "I moved them," she said. "When?" "They didn't belong in here. That's not what I asked. You don't need to interrogate me in my own home. Renee wants to know where they are." Another pause. Then Francis said, "Are you on the phone with her?" Caleb ended the call. The picture arrived a few seconds later. The wall above the bookcase showed a pale rectangle where the frame had blocked the sun. 2 metal hooks remained in place. Dad's level sat on the top shelf, right where he'd left it. I enlarged the picture. There were no packing boxes, no empty shelves. Nothing suggested Francis had started clearing the study after Dad died. She had removed only my things. I wanted to call her back. I even typed her name into my phone. Then I stopped. I knew how that conversation would go. Francis would say she was grieving. She would tell me I cared more about medals than my father. Caleb would ask us both to calm down. By the end, the missing shadow box would become my fault. That had happened before. A few months after Dad married Francis, he planned a Sunday dinner. He called me himself. 6 o'clock, he said. "I'm making pot roast." "You don't make pot roast. I bought one." "That isn't the same thing. Just be here at 6. I arrived at 5:45 with bread from the bakery on Hanover Street. The dining table was already set. Francis looked at the bread in my hands. "We're eating at 7:30, she said. Dad told me 6. He gets confused about times. Dad walked in from the kitchen. I said 6? "You did." He looked at Francis. She gave a little laugh. "Wayne, we changed it yesterday. Nobody had told me." Caleb arrived at 7:20 with flowers. He knew the new time. I stood in that kitchen for over an hour chopping vegetables because I didn't know what else to do. When dinner was ready, Francis carried the roast to the table. "Good thing Renee came early," she said. "I put her to work." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. That was the pattern. Francis changed the terms, and I adjusted. Caleb stayed agreeable. Dad let small things pass because he disliked tension in the house. I told myself none of it mattered. Dinner times didn't matter. Seating arrangements didn't matter. Being left out of photographs didn't matter. I was a grown woman. I'd managed supply movements across countries. I could survive a family dinner without having my feelings protected. What I didn't admit was that I wanted Dad to notice. I wanted him to say, "We should have called Renee." Sometimes he did. Most times he looked tired, and I made it easy for him. That Sunday after dinner, Dad walked me to my car. "Sorry about the time mix-up," he said. "It's fine." "You sure?" "Yes." He put his hands in his pockets. "Francis is still getting used to having family around. That didn't make sense. Francis had been the one hosting dinner. I could have said so. Instead, I hugged him and drove home. The morning he died, I followed the same pattern. I waited for someone to give me permission to be his daughter. Caleb called just before noon. She took my phone, he said. What? She saw your name and grabbed it. Are you still at the house? No. I left. Where are you? Market Cross. The pub was only a few blocks from Walnut Street. I put the inventory back in my records cabinet and drove over. Caleb sat in a rear booth with a glass of water. He'd ordered coffee but hadn't touched it. I slid into the seat across from him. Did she give the phone back? Eventually. What did she say? That you're making this about yourself. I looked toward the front window. People passed outside carrying shopping bags. A couple stopped to read the menu posted by the door. Caleb rubbed his eyes. She wants me to help pick a funeral home. Did Dad have one in mind? I don't know. He talked about being buried near Mom. I remember. Does Francis? She knows. That's not what I asked. He leaned back. Can you please stop talking to me like I'm one of your employees? I never spoke to my employees this way. That almost made him smile. The server came over. I ordered iced tea. Caleb asked for nothing. When she left, I placed my phone on the table and opened the picture he'd sent. Tell me what you saw. You have the picture. I'm asking what you saw before today. He looked away. There was my answer again. Caleb. Friday morning, he said. What happened? Friday morning, I stopped by before work. Dad needed help moving a cabinet in the carriage house. What cabinet? An old tool cabinet. It doesn't matter. Go on. When I came through the hallway, the shadow box was leaning against the wall. Outside the study? Yes. Was Dad there? He was in the kitchen. Did you ask why it was down? No. Why not? He picked up his water and put it down without drinking. It was wrapped in one of those blue, moving blankets. I only saw the frame because the top was open. Was the plaque with it? I don't remember. Who else was there? Francis. What was she doing? Talking to Dad? About the shadow box? I don't know. They stopped when I came in. I held his gaze. You heard something. Not really. What did you hear? He pressed both hands flat on the table. She said the room had to be cleared. Why? She didn't say. And Dad? He told her to leave it alone. That was the first clear answer I'd received all day. Those exact words? Yes. What did Francis say? I was already walking toward the back door. Caleb. I didn't want to get involved. You were involved. You were standing in the house. I had to get to work, so you left. Yes. The server brought my tea. I thanked her and waited until she walked away. Caleb stared at the paper wrapper around his straw. I thought it was about redecorating, he said. You thought that because it was easier. What was I supposed to do? Ask one question. They were married, Wren. Married people argue. And we disappear whenever they do? His eyes lifted. I hadn't meant to say we. That was the part I couldn't put entirely on him. Caleb avoided conflict. I turned myself into the reasonable one. Neither of us made Dad answer for what happened in his home. We had different methods, but the result was the same. Francis got the room. Did Dad seem sick? I asked. No. Tired? He was 72. He was always saying he was tired. Did he mention the funeral? Caleb nodded. That was Friday night. You went back? He called me. What did he want? He asked if I still had the photo of the three of us at your retirement. I remembered it. Dad stood between Caleb and me outside the reception room. My uniform jacket was still buttoned. Caleb had one hand on Dad's shoulder. Why did he want it? He said Francis was collecting pictures for something. Did you send it? Yes. Who did you send it to? Dad. Not Francis? No. I opened our family message thread. Dad's last message to me had been a picture of a coffee mug he'd broken. He'd added a sad face and asked whether glue could fix it. I'd told him no. He'd written, You always say no before explaining. I hadn't answered after that. Do you have the retirement picture on your phone? I asked. Caleb found it and sent it to me. I studied Dad's face. He looked proud and slightly uncomfortable, which was normal whenever attention landed on him. Frances had taken the picture. She'd been there, but she hadn't stood with us. What did Dad and Frances argue about Friday night? I asked. I told you. You said the funeral. That's broad. Caleb looked toward the bar, then lowered his voice. Dad said he wanted you involved. In what? The arrangements, the service, all of it. And she objected? She said you'd take over. I sat back. Did Dad agree? No. What did he say? He said you were the only person who would remember the details correctly. I looked at the ice melting in my glass. That sounded like Dad. It also explained why he'd asked for my retirement program. He hadn't wanted the program itself. He'd wanted a model. Military funerals have details people notice when they're wrong. Dad knew enough to worry and not enough to handle them himself. Was he asking for military honors? I said. I think so. He was never in the military. I know. Then what details? I don't know. Maybe he meant acknowledgments, names, that kind of thing. Did he say? Frances started talking over him. Of course she did. My phone buzzed on the table. Frances had sent a message directly to me. Please provide a list of Wayne's civic affiliations and any veteran organizations he supported. I need it by 3 this afternoon. No greeting. No mention of the locked door. She knew I'd kept Dad's community records because I helped him with donations every December. He'd bring me a grocery bag full of receipts, and I'd make a clean list. I showed the message to Caleb. She needs your help, he said. She needs my files. Same thing right now. No, it isn't. He leaned forward. Please don't make the funeral harder. I looked at him for several seconds. He hurt himself. I could tell by the way his shoulders dropped. I didn't mean it like that, he said. How did you mean it? I just want Dad buried without a fight. So do I. Then send her the list. I opened my calendar. That afternoon, I had a planning call with a distribution center outside Harrisburg. I also needed to finish a report by the end of the day. Frances hadn't asked whether I was available. She never did. Dad used to call and say, I need your army brain. Then I'd fix whatever was in front of him, a church delivery, a broken reservation, a seating plan. Being useful had become my place in the family. I thought I'd earned that place. Really, I'd trained everyone to expect the work without offering me a voice. I'll send the public information, I said. Caleb nodded, relieved. But I'm not rebuilding Dad's records for her, and I'm not helping through you. What does that mean? It means if Frances wants something, she calls me. She answers my questions, too. You know she won't like that. I'm not asking her to like it. We left the pub separately. At home, I found Dad's list and removed the private notes. I sent Frances the names of 2 civic groups and the Veterans Breakfast Committee. Then I added one sentence. Before I provide anything else, I need access to Dad's study and confirmation that my property is secure. She read the message within a minute. She didn't answer. Around 2, I joined my work call. A warehouse manager had received the wrong pallet count and wanted to blame the carrier. I checked the shipment record, found a duplicated line, and walked him through the correction. The problem took 12 minutes. Good catch, Colonel, he said before hanging up. I sat still after the screen went dark. At work, nobody needed me to prove I belonged in the room. They needed accurate information and a clear answer. My family needed those things too. They just preferred to pretend the answers appeared by themselves. At 3:10, Frances called. I let it ring once before answering. What do you need? I asked. Her voice was controlled. I need you to come to the funeral home tomorrow morning. Why? Because Caleb says you won't cooperate unless you're included. I closed my eyes. That isn't what I said. He's trying to help. I know what he's trying to do. She sighed. The appointment is at 10. Will I be part of the decisions? You can provide information. That wasn't my question. A long silence followed. Finally, Frances said, You may attend. There was the old offer. Do the work. Accept the seat she chose. Be grateful the door opened at all. A day earlier, I would have taken it. I'll attend, I said, but I'm not bringing my records. What? I'll answer questions about Dad. I won't hand over files while my property is missing. Nothing is missing. Then tell me where it is. She ended the call. A moment later, Caleb texted me. What did you say to her? I looked at the message, then set my phone face down. For the first time that day, I didn't hurry to make things easier. The next morning, I reached the funeral home at 9:50. Caleb was waiting near the entrance. He held the door for me. What did you say to her? He asked again. The truth. That doesn't answer anything. It answers enough. He followed me into the lobby. Can we get through one meeting without a fight? That depends on what you call a fight. I mean, no accusations. I haven't accused anyone. You accused Frances of taking the medals. She took them off the wall. You know what I mean. I stopped beside a table covered with sympathy cards. Before we go in, I need one thing from you. He looked worried already. If Frances says something you know is false, don't smooth it over. What am I supposed to do? Say what you saw. Nothing more. She's going to think we planned this. We're standing in a funeral home. I'm asking you not to lie. The meeting room door opened. Frances stood inside with a folder against her chest. You're late, she said. I checked the clock on the wall. It was 9:57. The funeral director greeted us and offered coffee. Nobody accepted. We sat around a round table. Frances took the chair beside him. Caleb sat across from her. I chose the seat next to Caleb. The director opened a file. I'm sorry for your loss, he said. Mrs. Powers has already provided the basic information. Today we'll confirm the service order and obituary. Frances placed her purse on the empty chair beside her. We need to keep this simple, she said. The director nodded. That's usually best. He passed copies of a draft across the table. My name wasn't on it. The obituary listed Frances as Dad's wife and Caleb as his son. It named 2 cousins and a former business partner. I read it again to make sure. Caleb reached the same line. You left Renee out, he said. Frances turned toward him. It's a draft. You included me. I said it's a draft. The director reached for his pen. I can correct it now. He looked at me. Your full name? Renee Dixon. Relationship? Before I could answer, Frances said, his daughter. The director wrote it down. Caleb looked at me. I gave him a small nod. He'd done what I asked. It didn't repair anything. Still, it was the first time he'd corrected Frances without waiting for me to go first. The director moved to the next page. We also need to confirm these notes about Mr. Dixon's interests, community service, local history, and military memorabilia. My finger stopped on the paper. Where did that come from? I asked. Frances kept her eyes on the director. Wayne displayed military items in his study. That wasn't his collection. She looked at me. We don't need to debate every word. It's not a debate. The director glanced between us. I pointed to the phrase, Dad never served. He supported veterans' events, but he didn't collect military memorabilia. Frances gave a tired sigh. He was proud of the items in his home. That's different. I was trying to describe him warmly, then describe something he did. The director drew a line through the sentence. We can remove it, he said. Frances's jaw tightened. I kept reading. The service was scheduled for the following Saturday. The burial would be near my mother, as Dad had wanted. Frances had selected 2 songs and a reading. There was no military portion. That made sense. Dad wasn't entitled to military honors, and none had been requested. At the bottom, the draft said family remarks would be delivered by Caleb. He noticed it too. I'm speaking, he asked. Frances folded her hands. You're his son. So is Renee. She isn't his son. You know what I meant. The director cleared his throat. More than one person may speak. Frances looked at me. Would you like to say something? She asked. It sounded generous if you hadn't been paying attention. Did Dad ask for me to speak? Her eyes narrowed slightly. This is why I didn't want you here. Every question becomes a challenge. It's a yes or no question. He and I discussed the service privately. Caleb shifted in his chair. I waited. Francis turned to him. What? He rubbed his thumb along the edge of the draft. Dad told me he wanted Renee involved. Involved doesn't mean speaking. I didn't say it did. Then what are you saying? I'm saying he asked for her. The funeral director placed his pen down. I can give the family a few minutes. No, Francis said quickly. We can continue. Her hand remained flat on the folder. That folder mattered to her. She'd brought information she didn't want us to see all at once. I didn't reach for it. I asked the director a simpler question. When did you receive the family information? Yesterday afternoon. From Francis? Yes. Did she provide anything in Dad's handwriting? Francis turned sharply. The director checked his file. No. The information came through our online form, thank you. That confirmed something useful. Francis hadn't built the draft from instructions Dad left behind. She'd written it after he died, then presented it as settled. It didn't prove what Dad wanted. It proved she didn't know either. The director continued through the service order. I answered only questions about Dad. I didn't offer extra names or records. When we reached photographs, Francis opened her folder. She removed 6 printed pictures. The first showed her and Dad at a restaurant. The second was from their wedding. The others included neighbors, one of Dad's civic dinners, and a Christmas gathering. There were none of Dad with me. Caleb leaned toward her. What about the retirement picture? I don't have it. I sent it to Dad Friday. Then it's on his phone. Where's his phone? At home. Did you look? I have had other things to do. I took out my copy of the picture. I have it. Francis held out her hand. I didn't give her my phone. I can email it to the funeral home, I said. The director wrote down an address. Francis slowly lowered her hand. That was another small change. Normally, I would have passed her the phone and let her control what happened next. Instead, I sent the picture directly. The director received it while we sat there. This is a good one, he said. Dad stood between his 2 grown children, looking straight at the camera. It should be included, Caleb said. Francis stared at the table. The director added it to the file. He told us he needed final obituary changes by noon the next day. The program could be adjusted after that, but photographs and names had to be settled first. The deadline changed the room. Francis gathered her papers. I'll make the remaining decisions tonight. I looked at the folder. Will we see the final version? I'll send it when it's done. That's not what I asked. She pushed her chair back. We are not doing this again. The director stood. I can send a proof to all 3 of you. Francis looked at him. That would prevent mistakes, I said. He nodded. I'll need each email address. Francis couldn't object without making her objection obvious. We gave him our information. The deliberate move had worked. Caleb and I would see the proof before it was printed. My name and the retirement picture were now part of the file. The cost was just as clear. Francis wasn't only keeping me out of the house, she was editing the public version of Dad's life, and she had less than a day to do it. Outside, Caleb stopped beside my car. You handled that better than I expected, he said. Thank you, I think. You know what I mean. I do. He put his hands in his jacket pockets. Why did you ask when she submitted the information? Because she kept talking like Dad made those choices. Maybe they discussed it? Maybe. But that form came from her. You think she's lying about everything now? No. That surprised him. I think she tells the truth when it helps her. That means I have to check the rest. He looked toward the funeral home windows. I hate this. So do I. She's going to blame me for the picture. You sent Dad the picture he requested. I mean today. You told the truth today. He gave a short laugh without any humor. You make that sound simple. It is simple. It just isn't comfortable. His phone rang. Francis's name appeared on the screen. He declined the call. Then it rang again. You should answer, I said. She'll ask where I am. You're standing in a parking lot. That isn't what she means." He answered and stepped several feet away. I couldn't hear everything. I caught my name twice. Then I heard him say, "No, I didn't give her anything." He listened for a while. "What closet?" he asked. I turned toward him. He looked at me. "No," he said into the phone. I never told her that. Another pause. She already knew it was gone. Francis spoke loudly enough that I heard the tone, not the words. Caleb ended the call. "What closet?" I asked. He slid the phone into his pocket. "She said you accused her of hiding the medals in the guest room closet." "I never mentioned a closet." "I know. Yesterday, she said nothing was missing. Today, she's talking about a closet. She says she put the shadow box there after Dad died. You saw it in the hallway on Friday." "I know." "Did you tell her that?" "No." "Good." He frowned. "You just told me not to smooth things over. I told you to state what you personally saw. I didn't tell you to give her every answer before we know what happened." He stared at me. "That sounds like an investigation. It's one missing box and 3 different explanations. Maybe she moved it twice. Then she can show it to us." I called Frances. She answered immediately. "What now? I want to see my property. I'm not at the house." "Caleb has a key. His key doesn't give you permission. The box is mine. It's safe." "Where?" "The guest room closet. I'll meet you there when you return." "No. You said it was in the closet. I said it was packed away. Those aren't the same thing. I don't have time for this. You had time to remove it." Her breathing changed. I took it down because Wayne asked me to. Caleb heard her. His face went still. "When did he ask you?" I said. "Friday." "What time?" "I don't remember. Caleb was there Friday morning." She said nothing. "He heard Dad tell you to leave it alone." Caleb closed his eyes. I hadn't planned to use that yet. Her answer forced the choice. Frances recovered quickly. They were discussing the room, not the medals. "Then let me see the box. You can see it after the funeral." "That's more than a week away." "Exactly. Nothing is happening to it." The call ended. Caleb looked angry now. "You said not to give her every answer. She was building a story around Friday. You could have warned me?" "I should have." That was true. He walked toward his truck. "Caleb." He stopped, but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry. You don't trust me. I trusted you with one fact. You gave it to me, and then you used my name. You're right." He faced me. "I'm stuck in the middle." "No. You keep putting yourself there. That's easy for you to say. It isn't easy at all." He opened his truck door. "Leave me out of whatever you're doing." He drove away before I could answer. I sat in my car and wrote down every explanation Frances had given. Nothing was missing. The items were part of Dad's collection. She moved them after he died. She packed them in the guest room closet. Dad asked her to remove them Friday. Each answer covered the one before it. I drove to Walnut Street. I didn't enter the property. I parked across from the house and called Frances once. She didn't answer. I sent a message instead. "I am outside. Please show me the shadow box through the front window. You do not need to let me inside." The front curtain moved. A minute passed, then another. If the box had been in the guest room closet, she could have carried it downstairs. She could have ended the argument without opening the door. She did neither. Instead, she sent 4 words. "Stop creating a scene." I looked along the quiet street. Nobody was outside. I hadn't left my car. That was when my objective changed. I wasn't asking for access to the study anymore. I needed to find out where Frances had taken my property, and I needed to do it before the funeral deadline gave her another reason to move it. I opened the photograph Caleb had sent from the empty study. Then I called him. He sent me to voicemail. I didn't leave an apology. I left one clear request. "Think back to Friday. Tell me who else came to the house." He called me back 20 minutes later. "I remember a man," he said. "I was still parked across from the house." "What man?" "He came Friday while I was moving the cabinet." "Inside the house?" "Yes." "What did he look like?" "About Dad's height. Gray hair. Glasses. He had a clipboard. Did you hear his name? No. What was he doing? Walking through the rooms with Francis. I looked at the carriage house behind the main house. Its double doors were closed. Was Dad with them? He was in the kitchen when I arrived. Did he know the man was there? I assume so. Don't assume. Caleb went quiet. What did you actually see? The man put numbered stickers on things. My grip tightened around the phone. What things? A side table. The grandfather clock. Some boxes in the dining room. Did he put one on the shadow box? I didn't see that. What did Francis call him? I don't remember. Think. I am thinking. A truck passed behind me. I lowered my phone until the sound faded. Did he give you a card? I asked. No. Did you see a company name? Maybe on his folder. What name? I don't know, Ren. His frustration sounded honest. Where did he go after the study? The carriage house. Why? There's a lot of Dad's stuff out there. I looked at the doors again. Dad kept tools, fishing equipment, old furniture, and boxes he hadn't opened in years. He always said he'd sort it when he had time. What kind of stickers? I asked. White, with numbers. Handwritten, printed. That sounded less like an appraisal and more like inventory. Did Francis say anything about selling things? Not to me. Did Dad? No. What happened when the man left? I was in the carriage house. I heard a car, but I didn't see him go. And the shadow box was already off the wall? Yes. I watched the front curtain. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Because I didn't connect it. You saw someone tagging Dad's belongings. I thought they were getting values for insurance. Did anyone say insurance? No. Then why did you think that? Because Dad was alive. That answer stopped me. Caleb hadn't imagined an estate sale because there wasn't supposed to be an estate yet. Did Dad know the shadow box was in the hallway? I asked. He had to. He walked past it. That doesn't mean he agreed. I know. Find out who the man was. How? Ask Francis. She's not going to tell me now. Then look for the card. Where? Dad's desk, the kitchen counter, wherever she puts paperwork. You're asking me to search her house. I'm asking you to identify someone you met. I didn't meet him. You held the door for him. How do you know that? Because you hold doors for everyone. He breathed out through his nose. That isn't funny. It wasn't a joke. He ended the call. I stayed across the street another 5 minutes. Then I drove home. I searched for estate auctions in Carlisle. There were several. Most had websites with photographs, dates, and online bidding. Nothing showed Dad's address. I searched his full name, then Walnut Street, then combinations of furniture, military display, and Carlisle. Still nothing. At 4:30, the funeral director emailed the revised obituary proof. My name was included. The sentence about military memorabilia was gone. The retirement photograph appeared in a small box near the bottom. Francis had added a sentence that Dad had been deeply devoted to his wife and son. It wasn't wrong. It was just carefully incomplete. Caleb replied to all three of us, "Please change son to children." 2 minutes later, the director confirmed the correction. I didn't write anything. Caleb had used the correct fact twice in one day. That mattered more than any argument I could have added. At 5:15, he called again. I found the name. Who? Greg Herrera. Where did you find it? There was a business card under Dad's desk blotter. What does he do? He's an auctioneer. I wrote the name on a pad. Does Francis know you found it? No. Are you still in the house? She went to pick up dinner. How did you get into the study? The door wasn't locked. Check the guest room closet. He didn't answer. You're already inside, I said. I know. If the box is there, this ends. For you, maybe. For both of us. No, then I have to explain why I was looking. Tell her I asked. That always seems to be your answer. Because I did ask. I heard his steps and the squeak of the upstairs floor. Dad complained about that floor for years. Every winter, he said he'd fix it in the spring. A closet door opened. There are coats, Caleb said. What else? 2 suitcases. A box fan. Any moving blankets? No. The shadow box? No. Check the floor behind the clothes. I can see the floor. Top shelf? Towels? I wrote down guest room closet. Not there. Now the carriage house? I said. No. Caleb. I said no. She could be back any minute. We know it isn't where she said. We know it isn't in that closet right now. That's enough. For what? I looked at Greg Herrera's name to stop asking Francis for explanations. After the call, I searched for Greg. His auction business had operated in Cumberland County for years. His website showed furniture, farm equipment, coins, and household estates. There was a page for upcoming sales. The first listing was dated the Monday after Dad's funeral. Dixon Household and Carriage House Contents. The address was 214 Walnut Street. I opened it. The page was marked as a preliminary catalog. More photographs would be added before the sale. The first picture showed Dad's carriage house with both doors open. Folding tables ran down the middle. The old tool cabinet sat against the rear wall. The next photographs showed lamps, dishes, hand tools, and fishing rods. Lot numbers appeared on white stickers. I kept scrolling. Dad's green rug was listed with 2 floor lamps. His desk chair was grouped with a filing cabinet. The coffee mug he'd broken sat in a box of kitchen items. It hadn't been glued. The handle lay beside it. Then I reached Lot 47. The photograph showed my shadow box resting on a blue moving blanket. The plaque and citations were included. The description was only one line: military decorations and retirement display from the Dixon family collection. There was no name attached to the retirement plaque in the photograph. The angle cut off the engraved section. The catalog didn't say the medals were mine. It didn't say they were Dad's either. Not yet. I saved the page as a file and took screenshots. Then I called Caleb. He answered in a whisper. She's back. I found the auction. What auction? I sent him the link. He went silent while he opened it. Oh, God, you didn't know? No. Look at Lot 47. I'm looking. Dad told her to leave it alone. I know. She moved it while he was alive, and she had it photographed for a sale. I can see that. Ask her when she hired Greg. Right now? Yes. Ren, she just brought food home. I looked at the broken mug on my screen. Then ask after dinner. He didn't respond. Caleb, the auction is the Monday after the funeral. She probably planned to tell us. When? I don't know. Did Dad know? I don't know. That was the larger question. The listing proved where my property had gone. It didn't prove whether Dad had agreed to sell the rest. I couldn't treat every object like mine because it wasn't. Frances was his wife. Much of the furniture belonged to her or to both of them. I had no right to stop her from selling those things. But the shadow box was different. I'm calling Greg, I said. Wait. For what? Let me talk to her first. She has lied every time I asked. If you call the auctioneer, she'll say you embarrassed her. She listed my medals online. I know. She's the one who made it public. I know, but please, give me one conversation. I looked at the date on the catalog. The sale was more than a week away. Waiting one evening wouldn't change that. You have until 8, I said. What happens at 8? I contact him directly. Okay, and don't negotiate about my property. I know. Do you? His voice hardened. Yes, Renee. I know. We ended the call. At 7:20, the preliminary catalog disappeared from Greg's upcoming sales page. The direct link still worked, but the photographs no longer loaded. I refreshed it twice. Then Caleb sent me a message. She says it was a mistake. She says the medals will be withdrawn. I called him. Did she say when? Tomorrow morning? Did she call Greg? She said she would. Did you hear her make the call? No. What exactly did you say to her? I told her the box belonged to you. How did she respond? She said Dad considered it part of the house. It wasn't. I told her that. And she said she didn't know about the paper you mentioned. I sat up straighter. What paper? The inventory. I never told her I still had it. I know. I didn't either. Then how did it come up? She said Dad used to joke that you made him sign a receipt. The description bothered me. Dad never called it a receipt in front of me. He called it the inventory. What else did she say? That she thought the paper stayed behind the frame. It had. Dad's original had been tucked behind the shadow box. If Frances removed the frame, she would have found it. Did she tell Greg about it? I asked. She says she didn't see it, but she knew where it was. She said Dad mentioned it. When? I didn't ask. I wrote down her words. She promised you she'd withdraw the lot? Yes. Not delay it. Not change the description. Withdraw it. And you believe her? I believe she knows I'm serious. I wanted to ask when that had ever stopped her. I didn't. Send it to me in writing, I said. What? Text her. Confirm the medals are being withdrawn. She'll know you told me to do it. Let her. He sighed. A minute later, he forwarded the exchange. Caleb had written, confirming that you are withdrawing Renee's shadow box plaque and citations from the auction tomorrow. Frances replied, yes, I will handle it. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't proof of withdrawal. It was the first clear commitment she'd made. I saved the exchange with the catalog screenshots. Then I called Greg Herrera's office. A recorded message said business hours ended at 5. I could leave my name and number for a return call. I waited through the tone. My name is Renee Dixon. I'm calling about an item in the preliminary catalog for the Walnut Street sale. The consignor has agreed to withdraw it. I'd like written confirmation before the auction. I left my number and ended the call. Frances had until morning to keep her promise. If she didn't, the disagreement was no longer staying inside the family. Greg returned my call at 8:12 the next morning. His voice was calm and businesslike. Ms. Dixon, I received your message about the Walnut Street auction. Thank you for calling. You mentioned a withdrawal. Yes, lot 47. I heard papers moving. That lot was withdrawn by the consignor at 7:40 this morning. I let out a breath. Is that confirmed? It's marked withdrawn in our system. Will it be removed from the sale? Yes, and from the online catalog. The catalog was still preliminary. That's why the images came down. Who has the shadow box now? I can't discuss a client's property with a third party. It's my property. He paused. Do you have documentation? I do. What kind? A signed inventory showing it was loaned for display. Signed by whom? My father and me. Do you have the original? I have my signed copy. Dad's copy was placed behind the frame. Greg was quiet for a moment. Did you submit that to our office? No. Frances said she was withdrawing the lot. She did. Then I don't need to submit it? Not for the current sale. The words current sale caught my attention. Can a withdrawn item be added back? The consignor can change instructions before the auction. Without notifying me, you aren't a party to our agreement. I'm the owner. If ownership is disputed, send a written claim with supporting documents. We'll review it before transferring anything. I wrote that down. What does Frances sign when she consigns property? A standard consignment agreement. Does she have to prove she owns every item? She warrants that she has clear title, meaning she represents that she has the right to sell it. And if that isn't true, then the agreement addresses the resulting loss and expenses. He didn't give me a lecture. He didn't promise an outcome either. I asked one final question. Did my father sign your agreement? I can't provide contract details. That wasn't what I asked. I understand. I still can't answer. His tone remained polite. Then please note that I called. I've already done that, thank you. After we hung up, I wrote the date and time beside his name. The withdrawal was a real result. For the first time since Dad died, one thing had moved in the right direction. It also depended entirely on Frances leaving it alone. At 8:30, she called. I handled your medals, she said. You withdrew the entire lot? Yes. Greg confirmed it. Her silence lasted half a second. You called him? I left a message yesterday. You had no reason to involve him after Caleb spoke to me. I had every reason. You made me look dishonest. I asked whether an item was withdrawn. You told him it belonged to you. It does. She lowered her voice. Do you have any idea what I'm dealing with? I know what I'm dealing with. My husband died 3 days ago. My father died 3 days ago. You aren't here in this house. You don't see the bills or the work. You locked me out. I was protecting Wayne's privacy. From his daughter? She took a breath. The auction is necessary. I'm not trying to stop the auction. Then stop calling the auctioneer. I called about one lot. People talk, Renee. Greg has a reputation to protect. So do I. There it was again. Not grief. Not even money. Reputation. I won't make a claim on anything that belongs to you, I said. What does that mean? It means exactly what I said. Are you threatening to go through every room? No. You've always acted like Wayne needed protection from me. I never said that. You didn't have to. She sounded tired now, but not uncertain. The funeral proof is due today, she said. I need his navy suit. It's in the study closet. I know where his clothes are. Then why are you telling me? There are 2 blue suits, the one with the plain buttons. He wore it to my retirement. I don't remember which one that was. I do. A long pause followed. Come at 10:30, she said. Will Caleb be there? Yes. I want to see the shadow box. It's already packed. Where? In the carriage house. Yesterday it had supposedly been in the guest room closet. Then show it to me in the carriage house. We don't have time. It takes 30 seconds. You said all you wanted was the lot withdrawn. I wanted my property returned. No. You demanded proof it was safe. I asked for both. She spoke over me. Come choose the suit, help with the program, then leave. The call ended. At 10:25, I parked in the driveway. My old key still hung on my key ring. I left it in the car. Caleb opened the back door before I knocked. You're early, he said. By 5 minutes. I know. She said you would be. He looked exhausted. Did you sleep here? On the couch. Why? She didn't want to be alone. I stepped into the kitchen. Boxes lined one wall. Each had a white label. China, linens, books. Dad's coffee maker was gone from the counter. When did she pack all this? I asked. Some of it was already packed Friday, before he died. I know. Caleb lowered his voice. She says they were clearing clutter. For an auction. I know what it looks like. What does it look like to you? He rubbed the back of his neck. Like they plan to sell things. They? I don't know. Frances entered from the dining room. She wore gray slacks and a black blouse. Her hair was pinned back. The funeral director needs the suit by noon, she said. No greeting. I followed her toward the study. The door stood open now. Dad's reading glasses rested on the desk. A half-used roll of peppermint sat beside them. His calendar was still turned to the current month. There was an entry on Friday. Greg, house, 9:30. The handwriting was Frances's. I knew because she made her capital G with a long loop. I pointed at it. Was Dad here for that appointment? Yes. Did he agree to the auction? He knew we needed to clear things. That isn't an answer. He was sitting in this room while Greg worked. Did Dad sign the agreement? Frances opened the closet. We came for a suit. You said Dad wanted his things sold. I said he knew. That changed quickly. Caleb stood in the doorway. Frances took out the first navy suit. This one? No, I said. They look identical. They aren't. I pushed the sleeve back and showed her the brass-colored button. Dad complained these looked like costume buttons. Caleb nodded. He did. Frances returned it to the closet. The second suit had plain dark buttons and a narrow repair inside the left cuff. Dad caught it on a nail at my house the year before. This one, I said. Frances handed it to Caleb. Take it to the car. He didn't move. What? She asked. I'm staying. Her eyes narrowed. Renee asked you to? No. Then take the suit. I'll take it when we leave. The room became very quiet. Frances turned back to me. What else do you need for the program? Dad's civic dates. You have those records. I sent the public list. The funeral home needs more. Then they can ask me. This is exactly what I mean. Everything has to pass through you. I almost laughed. My name had to pass through you before it reached the obituary. That was corrected. Because Caleb corrected it. Frances picked up Dad's reading glasses and folded them. "Are you speaking at the funeral?" she asked. "I haven't decided. You need to decide today." "Why?" "The program. A person can speak without being listed. I want the service organized." So did Dad. She set the glasses down harder than necessary. "If you intend to use the funeral to attack me, you will not speak." Caleb stepped into the room. "She never said that. I'm making expectations clear. I'm not discussing the auction at Dad's funeral," I said. "Or the medals. They're part of the same subject. Not at the service." I just agreed. No references, no indirect comments, no stories designed to embarrass me. "You want to approve what I say. I want to know what you plan to do." I looked at Caleb. He finally understood why I'd asked whether Dad wanted me involved. This wasn't about the length of the program. Frances wanted control of every version before anyone else heard it. "I'll speak about Dad," I said. "Nothing else. Send me your remarks first." "No, then you won't be on the program. That's your choice." Her mouth tightened. Caleb lifted the suit from the bed. "Dad wanted her involved," he said. "You keep repeating that because you keep ignoring it." Frances looked at him as if he'd broken something. "Take the suit to the car," she said. This time he did. I stayed in the study. The pale rectangle above the bookcase looked brighter in daylight. I checked the floor behind it and beneath the shelves. Dad's copy of the inventory wasn't there. A strip of brown paper lay near the baseboard. It matched the backing on the shadow box. I picked it up, photographed it in my palm, then returned it to the floor. Frances watched me. "What are you doing?" "Checking whether the inventory fell." "It didn't. You said you never saw it." I said I didn't remember seeing it. "No, you told Caleb you didn't see it. Is there a difference?" "Yes." She crossed her arms. "The paper isn't here. Then it stayed with the frame. Or Wayne removed it. Why would he? Maybe he didn't want his own daughter treating him like a museum." The words landed harder than I expected. Dad had signed willingly. He'd joked about losing a lawnmower. He'd chosen where to put his copy. Still, Frances knew which doubt to use. Maybe he'd resented the inventory later. Maybe he'd felt embarrassed by it. Maybe I'd turned a family gesture into another controlled handoff. I looked at his signature in my memory. Then I looked at the empty wall. "Show me the carriage house," I said. "No, you said the box is there." "It is." "Then unlock the door." "Greg's team organized everything. I'm not disturbing it. It's your property, according to you. This conversation is finished." She walked toward the doorway. I followed her through the hall. The back windows faced the carriage house. From the kitchen, I could see one of the side doors. A new brass padlock hung through the latch. "Who has the key?" I asked. "Greg. It's your building. He needed secure access." "Since Friday?" She didn't answer. Caleb came back inside. "The suit is in the car." "Good," Frances said. "You can take it to the funeral home." He looked at the boxes along the wall. "Did Dad agree to sell all this?" Frances turned toward him. "Yes. Did he sign anything? You sound like your sister." "I'm asking one question. I don't owe either of you an audit of my marriage." Caleb glanced at me. That was the useful result of coming to the house. We knew Greg had entered before Dad died. We knew Frances had arranged the appointment. We knew the shadow box was locked with the auction items, and Dad's signed copy was no longer in the study. We still didn't know what Dad had approved. Frances opened the back door. "Renee, you need to leave." I took out my phone. "I'm sending one message while we're together." "To whom?" "To both of you." I wrote it in front of them. My shadow box, plaque, citations, and the signed inventory behind the frame remain my property. Frances has confirmed they are in the locked carriage house. The lot has been withdrawn. I am requesting their return before the funeral. I sent it. Caleb's phone sounded first. Frances's followed. She read the message. "You're documenting me now? I'm documenting the location?" Her face changed. She understood the difference. A spoken argument could be reshaped later. That message could not. "You have no idea what you're starting," she said. "I'm asking for my own belongings, and if I don't hand them over on your schedule, I'll submit the ownership claim Greg told me to submit." She stared at me. Now she knew I'd spoken to him about more than a withdrawal. I stepped outside. Caleb followed with the suit over one arm. Behind us, Frances locked the back door. Then she walked straight toward the carriage house, took a small brass key from her purse, and opened the padlock she'd said only Greg could open. She didn't look back at us. Caleb placed the suit across the back seat of his truck. "Didn't she just say Greg had the key?" he asked. "Yes." We watched her disappear inside. The side door remained open. I walked toward it. Caleb caught up with me near the gravel path. "She told you to leave. She also told me she couldn't open that door." "Wren, I'm not forcing anything. The door is open." The carriage house smelled like dust and old wood. Sunlight came through the upper windows in narrow strips. Folding tables filled the center. Each item had a lot sticker. Dad's fishing rods were tied together near the wall. His toolboxes sat open so bidders could inspect them. My shadow box rested on the last table. The blue moving blanket was folded beneath it. The plaque and citations were stacked beside the frame. Frances stood with her back to us. She was looking at the paper attached behind the shadow box. Dad had used 2 small pieces of painter's tape to hold it flat. One had pulled loose. Frances removed the other. "What does it say?" Caleb asked. She turned. Her face had lost its color. "You had no right to follow me in here." "That paper is mine," I said. "It has Wayne's signature, and mine." She folded it once. "Give it to me." "No, that's the original inventory. I know what it is." "Then you know the items weren't given to Dad." Frances looked at the page again. "This was signed 2 years ago." "Yes, a lot can change in 2 years. Ownership doesn't change because time passed. Wayne told me these were staying with him. They were staying on display. He called them his, not to me. You weren't here every day." The sentence landed exactly where she aimed it. She was right about one part. I hadn't been there every day. I'd had work, my own house, and the habit of thinking Wednesday lunch was enough. Frances lived with him. She heard the late-night coughing and knew which television programs he watched when he couldn't sleep. She knew what he ate for breakfast. That didn't make my property hers. It also didn't make every memory she described false. Caleb stepped closer to the table. "Frances, the paper is clear. You haven't read it. I can see the heading." She folded it again and slipped it into her purse. "Give Renee the box," he said. "I already withdrew it. That isn't the same thing. It will remain safe until after the funeral." "Why?" "Because I don't trust her not to turn this into a performance." I stood beside the table. "Pick it up and hand it to me." "No, it belongs to me." "Then prove it through the proper process." "You're holding the proof." She tightened her hand around her purse. "The proper process is the one you demanded. Greg can deal with it. You withdrew the lot, exactly. So there's no emergency." I put both hands at my sides. The box was close enough for me to touch. I could have lifted it and walked out. I didn't. It was my property, but the carriage house was hers. If I grabbed it, Frances would turn the whole argument into how I entered after being told to leave. She wanted that. "Why did you describe it as a family collection?" I asked. "The wording was temporary." "Who wrote it?" "Greg's office. Based on what you told them. You don't know that. Then correct it. The lot is withdrawn. Correct the record anyway." Her expression changed. That was when I understood the wording wasn't careless. She didn't just want the box gone. She wanted the story attached to it. Dad had been proud of my service. People in Carlisle knew he attended veterans events. If the medals appeared among his belongings, they made him look connected to something he admired. Frances preferred that version because it centered the house, the family name, and her husband. My name made the ownership clear. It also made Dad the caretaker, not the source. "Wayne valued those medals," she said. "I know. He showed them to people. I know that too. He was proud to have them." "Yes. Then why are you treating him like he stole them?" "I'm not. You made him sign a paper." He understood why. "Maybe he signed because you made everything formal." Caleb looked between us. "Dad signed it," he said. That should be enough. Francis turned on him. You think a piece of paper tells you more about your father than I knew from living with him? No. Then stop taking her side. I'm not taking sides. You followed her in here. The door was open. I told her to leave. Caleb looked at the shadow box. Just give it back. Francis picked up the plaque and placed it against the frame. I will return everything after the funeral. No conditions, I asked. You stop contacting Greg. That's a condition. You stop discussing the auction with people. Which people? Anyone. That's another condition. You send me what you plan to say at the service. Caleb closed his eyes. I looked at him. Do you hear this now? He didn't answer. Francis lifted the shadow box. You want your things. I want one peaceful week. You had a peaceful week until you took them. Your father is dead. I know. Then act like it. I didn't raise my voice. Put the box down. She held it tighter. Will you agree? No. You won't agree to keep his funeral free of this? I already told you I won't mention the auction, but you won't send me your remarks. No. Then you won't speak. That's your decision. It's your decision. No. You don't get to make a demand, then assign me responsibility for it. Her eyes moved toward Caleb. Are you hearing her? He stared at the floor. Francis waited. So did I. Finally, he said, maybe just send her the remarks, Wren. The words hurt more because he said them quietly. Not because I needed to speak at the funeral. I hadn't even decided what I would say. I needed him to recognize the exchange. Silence for property. Approval for participation. He recognized it. He just wanted me to accept it. Francis gave one small nod. Thank you. I looked at Caleb. You think this is reasonable? I think Dad's funeral matters more than a speech. This isn't about the speech. Then send it. You know what she's doing. I know what both of you are doing. Francis carried the box toward the rear of the carriage house. Where are you taking it? I asked. A secure room. There's no secure room back there. She stopped. Dad had kept a narrow storage area behind the workbench. The door had a basic latch, not a lock. You haven't been here in months, she said. I helped Dad move shelving in April. Then you know the room. I know it doesn't lock. Greg's printed labels covered several boxes near the rear wall. One label had an empty rectangle where a description would be inserted later. Francis set the shadow box behind those boxes. Then she pulled a canvas tarp over it. The action was almost childish. We all knew where it was. You need to leave, she said. This time I did. Caleb followed me outside. Francis closed the side door and snapped the padlock into place. The brass key remained in her hand. Caleb walked toward his truck. I can take the suit, I said. I've got it. You should tell the funeral director which one it is. I heard you. He opened the driver's door. You used me yesterday, he said. I apologized. And then you did it again. How? You brought me in there knowing she'd make me choose. I didn't know she'd open the carriage house. You always have an answer. What do you want me to say? That you could have waited. For what? Until after the funeral. And if she sold it before then? The auction was after the funeral. That doesn't make it hers. I know that. You keep saying you know. Because I do. Then act like it. He flinched. I regretted the line as soon as it left my mouth. I sounded like Francis. Caleb put the suit on the passenger seat. I'm trying to bury Dad, he said. So am I. No, you're trying to win. He got into the truck and drove away. My phone rang before I reached my car. It was the funeral director. Ms. Dixon, I'm calling about the service program. What changed? There was a brief pause. Mrs. Powers asked that family remarks be limited to Mr. Dixon's son. I understand. She said there was disagreement about content. There isn't any content yet. That's what I thought. He sounded uncomfortable. I don't want to place you in the middle, I said. I appreciate that. Is my name still in the obituary? Yes. The corrected proof lists Wayne's children. And the photograph? It remains in the memorial slideshow. Then keep both. You don't want me to challenge the speaking decision? No. All right, please send the final proof to all three of us. I will. When the call ended, I sat in my car. The cost wasn't only losing a place on the program, it was how quickly Frances had turned the funeral into proof that I was difficult. Caleb had seen the paper. He'd seen the box. He'd heard her conditions. He still left believing I was the one pushing too hard. At noon, the final obituary arrived. It named both children. The military collection reference remained deleted. The small corrections had held. My phone started buzzing with messages from people Dad knew. Francis had sent the obituary to his community contacts. One woman asked why I was causing problems over his funeral. Another said grief made families behave badly. I didn't reply. Then a neighbor from Walnut Street sent a longer message. She said Francis was overwhelmed and had told people I was demanding items before Dad was buried. She asked whether I could give my stepmother some grace. I typed 3 responses and deleted all of them. Francis didn't mention the auction. She didn't mention the signed inventory. She didn't mention that she'd packed the box before Dad died. She only described my reaction. That was the true size of the conflict. If I got the shadow box back quietly, Frances could still keep her version. I would remain the daughter who arrived after a death and fought over valuables. I'd spent years believing my place in the family depended on being useful and calm. Now that same silence was being used as evidence against me. I opened the inventory on my computer. The document wasn't a weapon against Francis. It was a boundary Dad had accepted before he took possession. That distinction mattered. I made a new folder. I saved the inventory, the catalog screenshots, Caleb's photograph of the empty wall, Francis's written promise, and my note from Greg's call. Then I sent Caleb one message. I will not involve you in another conversation with Francis. I will not discuss the auction at the funeral. I will also not trade silence or approved remarks for the return of my property. He read it. He didn't respond. I had lost my speaking place, whatever trust remained between us, and the reputation I'd protected by staying agreeable. Getting the box back was no longer enough. I needed the record to show one clean fact. Dad displayed my service because I trusted him, and that trust did not transfer ownership to anyone else. I closed the message thread and called the funeral director. I want to separate 2 issues, I said. All right. The funeral is about Dad. The property dispute is not. I understand. I'm not asking to be added as a speaker. I am asking that the obituary, family names, and photographs remain accurate. They will. Can you send that confirmation in writing? He paused. Yes. I'm not trying to make your job difficult. You aren't. Francis may tell you otherwise. Another pause. I'll send the final proof to everyone, he said. After approval, no one person can change it without a new proof going to the group. That was useful. Has the program been approved? Not yet. What's missing? The order of family remarks and the civic information. I sent the civic affiliations yesterday. You sent 2. Mrs. Powers added 4 more. Which 4? He read them to me. 2 were correct. One was an organization Dad had supported but never joined. The last was a committee Caleb served on, not Dad. Remove the last 2, I said. I'll need confirmation. I can provide public records for the 2 he belonged to. The others aren't accurate. I'll mark them for review. I'll email the links within 15 minutes. I did. Dad's name appeared on one organization's annual report and on the Veterans Breakfast volunteer page. I sent only those pages. I didn't send my private donation records. The director replied that both references were accepted. A new proof would follow that afternoon. Then I called Greg. I'd like written confirmation of the withdrawal, I said. I can send it. Please copy the consignor. That's standard. Can the shadow box be released to me through your office? No. It remains at the seller's location. Under your control? Under our auction setup until the sale is complete. But it's withdrawn. Withdrawn items are separated before auction day. We don't transfer them to third parties. I'm not a third party. I understand your position. Do you? I understand that you claim ownership. I haven't reviewed proof. I appreciated the distinction. What would you need if the lot were reinstated? A written claim, the signed inventory you mentioned, photographs identifying the items, and anything supporting the display arrangement. Would my retirement photographs help? They might. What about the citations? If they identify you and match the contents, yes. Would you decide ownership? No. I'd decide whether I could proceed with the sale. That was simple enough. And the consignor's agreement? She represented that she had clear title to everything listed, even if something belonged to another family member, especially then. He didn't sound interested in family arguments. He sounded interested in whether he could safely transfer property after taking money. That helped me understand how to speak to him. I'm not asking you to take my side, I said. Good. I'm asking you to follow your process. That's what I'll do. His email arrived 10 minutes later. Lot 47 was withdrawn at the consignor's direction. No bid would be accepted for it at the scheduled Monday sale unless its status changed. Francis was copied. I saved the email. Then I built a separate folder for the funeral. That folder held Dad's correct civic affiliations, the retirement photograph, and the approved obituary proof. Nothing about the medals went into it. The ownership folder stayed separate. It felt almost embarrassingly basic. Still, the separation mattered. Francis had spent 3 days tying every question to Dad's death. Now each issue had its own record. At 2, I joined another work call. The warehouse manager from the day before had corrected his count, but the receiving schedule was still wrong. I moved one delivery to Thursday and combined 2 smaller shipments. Nobody argued. When the call ended, my supervisor asked if I could take another assignment that week. Not this week, I said. Normally, I would have agreed and worked late. Family issue? She asked. My father died. Her face softened. Renee, I'm sorry. Thank you. Take the time you need. I almost told her I was fine. Instead, I said, I need tomorrow morning. Done. That gave me 4 hours I hadn't planned to have. I used the first hour to print the documents Greg had named. I placed the inventory on top. Dad's signature was clear. So was mine. The retirement photograph showed the shadow box before I loaned it. The decorations matched the current catalog picture. The citations carried my full name. I didn't send the packet. The lot was withdrawn. Sending it now would turn a settled status into a formal dispute. Greg had been clear about what triggered review. I put the packet in a plain envelope and locked it in my records cabinet. At 3:40, the funeral proof arrived. The obituary named Dad's children correctly. The false affiliations were gone. Our retirement photograph remained in the slideshow list. The program included family remarks by Caleb. My name wasn't listed as a speaker. I approved the facts. Caleb approved them 2 minutes later. Francis did not respond. At 5, the funeral director sent another email. I replied first. I do not agree. Wayne requested this photograph from Caleb 2 days before his death. Please retain it unless Caleb states that information is incorrect. Caleb called me immediately. Why did you put me in the email? Because you're the one Dad asked. She's furious. Is the information wrong? No. Then reply. Why does the picture matter this much? It mattered to Dad on Friday. Maybe he wanted it for something else. Then say that. I don't know what he wanted. Neither does Francis. He made a frustrated sound. You're turning every detail into evidence. I'm checking facts before they're printed. This is a funeral program. Exactly. What do you want me to write? The truth. I'm getting tired of that answer. I know. He ended the call. 5 minutes later, his reply reached all of us. Dad requested the photo from me on Friday. I sent it to him. I don't know why, but Renee's statement is accurate. The director responded. The photograph will remain. That was the first visible result of the new approach. I hadn't argued with Francis. I hadn't asked Caleb to take my side. I'd put one fact in front of the people responsible for the program. The fact held. At 6:30, someone knocked on my front door. Francis stood on the porch. She had never come to my house alone before. I opened the door but didn't invite her inside. "We need to speak privately," she said. "We are private." She looked toward the street. "Not on the porch. This is where I'm comfortable. You think I'm going to take something? I think I'm allowed to decide who enters my house." She understood the reference. Her mouth tightened. "I received Greg's email." "So did I. You made him copy you. I asked for confirmation. The lot is withdrawn." "Yes." "Then this needs to stop." "What needs to stop?" "The emails, the documentation, putting Caleb in the middle. I told Caleb I wouldn't involve him in property conversations. You used him against me over the photograph. I stated what happened, he confirmed it. You made him choose." "No." I gave him room to answer. She glanced toward my dining room window. My records cabinet was visible from the porch if someone knew where to look. "Do you have Wayne's files here?" she asked. "I have my files. He brought records to you every year, for donation lists. Those belong to the estate." "No, Dad brought receipts. I returned them after I made the lists." "Can you prove that?" "I don't need to." She stepped closer. "I'm trying to keep this civil. So am I. Then give me whatever copy you have of that inventory." I kept my face still. She knew there had been a paper behind the frame. She knew Dad had signed it. She didn't know what remained in my cabinet. "You took the signed inventory from the shadow box," I said. "It was in Wayne's possession. It was attached to my property. It was in my carriage house." "Where is it now?" "Safe. Return it with the box. After the funeral. No conditions. We already discussed this." "That means there are conditions." Her voice dropped. "Send Greg an email stating the matter is resolved. It isn't resolved. The lot is withdrawn. The box is still locked in your carriage house. It will stay there for 1 week. Why? Because I said so. That isn't a reason." She folded her arms. "I want your agreement that you will not challenge the auction. I have no claim to your property. That's not what I asked. It's the only agreement I'll give. What about Wayne's property? I won't claim it. What about family property? Name the item. You know exactly what I mean." "No, Frances. That phrase is the problem." She looked past me again. "The medals were in my husband's study for 2 years. They were displayed there. He treated them like part of his collection. You keep saying collection. Dad never used that word with me. He used it with other people." "Who?" "I don't owe you names." "Then don't offer unnamed people as proof." For the first time, her composure slipped. "You think your rank lets you order everyone around. I'm standing on my own porch asking for my own property. You made sure Greg knew who you were. I gave him my name. What else did you give him?" The question came too quickly. "Ask Greg. I'm asking you. I told him I could document ownership. Did you send him something?" I didn't answer. She studied my face. "If you manufacture a new paper," she said, "I will challenge it. The signed paper already exists. The one Wayne kept." "Yes, I have that one." "Then you know what it says." She went silent. A car turned onto my street. Frances stepped away from the door. "The funeral is in 4 days," she said. "You can either behave like his daughter or behave like a claimant. I'm both." "No, Renee, not this week." She walked down the steps. I watched her get into her car. She hadn't come to return anything. She'd come to find out whether I still had proof. I closed the door and checked the records cabinet. The envelope was untouched. Then I moved it to the locked drawer in my work desk. Frances had stopped asking me to stay quiet. Now she wanted to know exactly what I could prove. The next morning, the funeral director called before 8. "Mrs. Powers has canceled the memorial slideshow," he said. I sat at my desk with my first cup of coffee. Did she say why? She wants a simpler service. What about the retirement photograph? There won't be any photographs. None? No. And family remarks? She removed those too. Caleb isn't speaking. That's correct. I looked at the program proof on my screen. What remains? The reading, music, obituary, and closing prayer. Are the names still correct? Yes. Then I have no factual correction. He waited. "You can object to the changes," he said. "Would an objection stop them? Mrs. Powers is the person making the arrangements. Then no, I'm sorry. Thank you for telling me. I called Caleb. He answered with, I already know. She canceled your remarks. Because of us. Because of her. You know what I mean? No. Say what you mean. He was quiet for a few seconds. She says if she includes one of us, the other will turn it into an argument. I never asked her to include me. You kept challenging the program. I corrected my relationship to Dad and 2 false affiliations. And the picture. Dad requested that picture. Maybe we should have let it go. Why? So something could be normal. Normal for whom? He didn't answer. I moved my coffee away from the keyboard. Did Frances tell you why she came to my house? She said she tried to compromise. She asked what proof I had. She said you wouldn't guarantee that you'd leave the auction alone. I guaranteed I wouldn't claim her property. She wants the whole thing over. So do I. She can return the box. I told her that. What did she say? After the funeral. With conditions. I know. The words were automatic now. I could hear it. Caleb, I'm going to attend Dad's funeral. I'm not going to make a speech. I'm not going to mention the auction. I'm not going to argue with Frances. Okay, but I'm also not taking responsibility for choices she makes to punish both of us. He let out a long breath. I spent all night writing what I wanted to say. Keep it. For what? For you. That's not the same. No, it isn't. He ended the call without saying goodbye. At 9, I started work. I had one short planning meeting, then the morning was mine. My supervisor had cleared the time, but I didn't know what to do with it. I cleaned my kitchen. I answered 2 condolence messages. I checked Greg's website. The Walnut Street auction no longer appeared on the upcoming sales page. The direct link showed an error. I took that as another confirmation that the Monday sale was being changed or rebuilt. I didn't know which. At 9:35, Frances emailed me and Caleb. She wrote that the funeral would remain simple because family conflict had become too distracting. She asked us not to contact the funeral home without going through her. I replied only to the funeral director. Please retain my contact information for factual corrections. I understand that Frances controls the service arrangements. I copied Frances and Caleb. Frances replied within a minute. Stop undermining me. I didn't answer. At 10:18, Caleb called. His voice sounded different. He was outside and I could hear an engine running. Where are you? He asked. Home. You need to check the auction site. I checked it less than an hour ago. Check again. I opened Greg's page. A new banner appeared at the top. Wednesday Carriage House Auction. Registration at 10. Sale at 11. The address was Dad's. My clock showed 10:19. The auction is today, I said. I know. How did you find out? I came to the house. Why? Frances asked me to bring folding chairs to the funeral home. I thought they were in the carriage house. What did you see? Cars. A sign by the curb. People registering. Is Frances there? Yes. Did she tell you the schedule changed? No. Did Greg? I asked one of his workers why they were setting up today. He said Frances moved the sale forward. Where are the medals? I don't know. Check the catalog. The new catalog loaded slowly. The lots had been reorganized. There were more photographs now, including close views of furniture and boxes from the house. Lot 47 was no longer marked withdrawn. The picture had changed. My shadow box stood upright against a dark cloth. The retirement plaque had been turned, so the engraved side faced away from the camera. The description read, Wayne Dixon's Inherited Military Collection, with decorations, citations, and framed retirement display. I read it twice. Inherited. That word did 3 things for Frances. It suggested the medals were old. It suggested they belonged to Dad's family. It hid the fact that the retirement display belonged to a living person. Caleb, who wrote the new description. I don't know. Ask Greg. He's talking to bidders. Then ask Frances. I already did. What did she say? That Dad told her they came from his family. They didn't. I know. Did you tell her that? Yes. What did she say? that you were confused because some of the metals looked alike. I stood. She said I was confused. She said you created a display using family pieces. You were at my retirement ceremony. I know. You saw that shadow box before Dad took it home. I know, Ren. Then say it to her. I did. What happened? She told me to leave. I opened the withdrawal email from Greg. It referred to the scheduled Monday sale. Frances had changed the schedule and reinstated the lot after that email. She hadn't broken the written confirmation. She had moved around it. What number are they on? I asked. They haven't started. Registration at 10, sale at 11. Yes. How many lots before 47? I don't know if they're using the catalog order. Find out. Where are you going? To get my documents. Wait. No, I'll talk to Greg. You already said he's busy. Then I'll make him listen. What are you going to tell him? That the description is false. He'll ask for proof. I was there. You're a witness. You aren't the owner. The words came out sharper than I intended. Caleb went silent. I'm sorry, I said, but this needs the signed inventory. Then send it to me. No. Why? Because Frances is standing near you. You think I'd give it to her? I think she'd see you carrying it. I think she'd ask what it is. I think you'd try to explain. That's not fair. It's what you've done every time. He didn't respond. I walked to my work desk and unlocked the drawer. The envelope was still there. Caleb, I need you to do one thing. What? Find out whether the lot is on the table. I can try. Don't touch it. I know. Don't argue with Frances. I know. Call me when you see it. He ended the call. I removed the documents from the envelope. The inventory, the retirement photograph, the ceremony program, copies of the citations, the first catalog screenshot, Greg's withdrawal email. I arranged them across my desk. The inventory was the only document that established ownership. Everything else showed that the display was mine and that Frances's description was false. That distinction kept the strategy narrow. I wasn't going to ask Greg to decide who had been the better daughter, wife, or sister. I was going to ask him not to sell property covered by his consignor's warranty. At 10:29, Frances called. I answered. You spoke to Caleb, she said. Yes. He had no business coming here. You asked him to get chairs. Not from the auction. The chairs are in the carriage house. He could have waited. So could you. This date worked better for Greg. You moved it from Monday to today. Yes. After promising Caleb you would withdraw my property, I withdrew it from the Monday sale. Her answer was immediate. She'd prepared it. You knew exactly what he meant. I knew he was pressuring me while I was grieving. You reinstated the lot. It was never yours to withdraw. You have Dad's signed inventory. I have an old piece of paper. It states ownership. It states what you wanted 2 years ago. What changed? Wayne changed his mind. When? Before he died. What did he say? That the display belonged with his family. I am his family. You know what he meant. No, Frances, I don't. She dropped her voice. You still have time to make this easy. How? Email Greg. Tell him you have no claim against the auction. I do have a claim. Then you won't attend the family gathering after the funeral. I sat down. You're trading access to Dad's memorial for my property. The gathering is in my home. That's your right. And I will make sure people know why you aren't there. That's also your choice. You think a paper will make this look better? This isn't about how it looks. It's always about how it looks. You wore that uniform into every room and expected people to move. I glanced at the retirement photograph. Dad's hand rested on my shoulder. Caleb stood on his other side. Greg is selling a false description, I said. Then show up and humiliate your father 3 days before his funeral. You scheduled the auction. I'm not the one preparing a performance. The line went quiet. Then she said, if you walk into that carriage house, you are choosing property over family. No, I'm choosing not to let you sell what isn't yours. She ended the call. At 10:38, Caleb sent a photograph. The shadow box sat on a table beside Greg's auction stand. A bidder was leaning close to read the citations through the glass. Caleb called a second later. "It's here. Has Greg seen it? He's standing 10 feet away. Tell him there's an ownership claim." I did. What did he say? He said the seller assured him it was resolved. Tell him it isn't. He said claims have to be submitted in writing. I'm coming. Frances says if you do, she'll remove your name from everything she can. She already tried. What about the funeral gathering? I won't attend it. His voice broke slightly. Dad would hate this. I know. Then why can't you wait? Because the hammer won't wait. I placed the inventory on top of the packet. Using it publicly would expose Dad's private arrangement. It would end any chance of keeping the dispute inside the family. Frances would call it revenge, and some people would believe her. That was the price of the only leverage I had. I put the documents back in the envelope, took my car keys, and drove toward Walnut Street. Traffic backed up near the square. I called Caleb through the car speaker. What lot are they on? 16. Is Frances near the box? She's by the auction desk. Has Greg looked at my message? What message? I'm sending a written claim. You said you were bringing it. I am. I'm also preparing the cover page now. You're driving. I'm stopped. The light changed. I put both hands on the wheel. Call me when they reach 30, I said. What am I supposed to do until then? Nothing. That's not an option here. What is Frances doing? Telling people you're confused. Which people? Anyone who asks why the lot was withdrawn before. Don't argue with her. You're serious? Yes. She told one bidder Dad inherited the medals from an uncle. Dad had no uncle in the military. I told her that. Stop correcting her. Why? Because she needs to own the description. Caleb didn't answer. I turned onto East Lowther Street. Wren, she's telling people you made a copy of some old receipt. She hasn't seen my copy. She says the original doesn't prove anything. Then let Greg read it. You sound very calm. I'm driving. That isn't what I mean. I know. He lowered his voice. If this happens in front of everyone, there's no coming back from it. She can withdraw the lot right now, I asked her. What did she say? That you wouldn't dare make a scene before the funeral. I looked at the line of brake lights ahead. This isn't a scene yet, I said. It will be, only if she keeps the lot. Caleb ended the call. I needed a safe place to finish the claim. I pulled into a public parking area near Carlisle Barracks and stopped. The envelope sat on the passenger seat. I took out the inventory. At the top, I had typed Retained Title Display Inventory. Below that were the shadow box, the individual decorations, the citations, and the retirement plaque. The last paragraph was short. These items remain the property of Renee Dixon and are loaned to Wayne Dixon for display in his study. No ownership transfer is intended. Dad's signature appeared directly beneath it. There was no unclear family language, no promise of a later gift, no reference to inheritance. I checked every page. Nothing was missing. I compared the inventory to the catalog photograph. The shadow box matched. The citation arrangement matched. The plaque matched. That removed the first uncertainty. Frances could argue about what Dad said later. She could not honestly argue that the loan had never existed. I wrote the claim on a clean sheet from my work folder. My name, address, and phone number went at the top. I identified Lot 47 and stated that I owned the listed items. I requested that no possession or payment transfer occur until Greg reviewed the attached documents. I listed the attachments: signed retained title inventory, retirement photograph, retirement ceremony program, citations identifying me, catalog screenshot showing the item. I did not include the photograph of Dad's empty wall. I did not include the funeral emails. I did not include Frances's messages. Those things showed the family conflict. They didn't establish ownership. My phone rang. Caleb. They're at 28. That moved fast. Some lots are grouped. I'm leaving now. Wait. Frances wants to talk to you. I've already spoken to her. She says she'll take the box out if you promise not to submit anything. Put her on speaker. I heard movement. Then Frances's voice came through. Where are you? Near the barracks. Turn around. Withdraw the lot. I'm trying to. No, you're trying to make another trade. You have no idea how much damage you're doing. Tell Greg to mark it withdrawn. He won't keep changing the catalog because you can't make up your mind. I haven't changed my mind once. You wanted it displayed here. Yes, you left it with Wayne, as a documented loan. You didn't ask for it back while he was alive. He died 4 days ago. The words stopped both of us. For a moment, all I heard was auction noise behind her. Then she said, "Let me bury my husband. Give Greg the box." You're cold. No, I'm being clear. If you submit that paper, I will tell everyone you created it after Wayne died. Do what you choose. She ended the call. Caleb stayed on the line. She's serious, he said. So am I. Can the paper be verified? It's signed. That isn't what I asked. The copy has been in my records since Dad took the box. Can you prove that? I scanned it 2 years ago. You have a dated scan? Yes. I opened the records application on my phone. The file information showed the date it had been created. The scanned image matched the paper in my hand. I took a screenshot of the file details and added it behind the inventory. That didn't create ownership. The signed inventory did that. The scan supported when my copy existed. Frances doesn't know about the scan, I said. She thinks you're making it up. I know. Do you want me to tell her? No. Why not? Because she already has the original. She says she doesn't. I watched her put it in her purse. So did I. Then let her say what she wants. Caleb went quiet. The auctioneer's voice continued in the background. I couldn't make out the lot number. I need one more thing, I said. What? Go to the catalog table. Check whether the citations are still with the box. Why? Because the inventory lists them separately. I can see them from here. All of them? I don't know how many there should be. 3 mounted pages and 1 loose program. The program isn't there. It's in my packet. I mean with the lot. Good. What about the citations? I see 3 pages behind the glass. That matches. What happens if Greg believes you? He stops the transfer. And the rest of the auction? Nothing. You could challenge the whole thing. On what basis? Dad didn't sign the agreement. We don't know that. Greg wouldn't answer you. That isn't proof. Frances planned the sale before Dad died. She had Greg at the house. Dad was present. He told her to leave the metals alone. That applies to my property. Caleb lowered his voice. You could make people question all of it. I'm not going to. Why not? Because the desk chair isn't mine. The fishing rods aren't mine. The dishes aren't mine. What if she lied about those too? Then their owners can make claims. You think Dad wanted his whole house sold? I don't know. It was tempting to use the photographs of packed boxes. It was tempting to tell every bidder that Frances had started tagging Dad's belongings while he was alive. That would damage the auction. It might even force Greg to pause everything. It would also turn suspicion into a weapon. I had spent days objecting when Frances did that to me. I'm challenging 1 lot, I said. Nothing else. Caleb breathed out. All right. What lot now? 33. I'm coming. Before leaving the parking area, I called the Carlisle Barracks Protocol office. A civilian employee answered. I gave my name and retirement date. I need to confirm whether my ceremony records are still archived, I said. What records? The program and retirement citation. Can you hold? I waited. Through my windshield, I could see the edge of the post beyond the trees. I had driven those roads hundreds of times. For years, I knew exactly which office held which responsibility. Family was the only place where I kept accepting unclear lines. The employee returned. We have an archived program, citation, and ceremony file for Lieutenant Colonel Renee Dixon. Does the file include the decoration configuration? 1 moment. She checked again. Yes. The retirement display photograph is included. Can your office authenticate those records if a licensed auctioneer calls? We can confirm what's in the official archive. We can't authenticate private property or determine ownership. I understand. Is there a dispute? Yes. Do you want a certified copy? There isn't time. We can provide verbal confirmation of the archived records to a professional caller. They'll need your full name and retirement year. That's enough. I gave her Greg's name and told her he might call. She wrote it down but made no promise that he would. The office could confirm my service documents. It could not stop the sale. It could not make Francis return anything. That removed the second uncertainty. If Greg questioned whether the citations were genuine, the archive existed. My signed inventory still had to carry the claim. I placed the packet back in order. At the top of my written statement, I added one sentence. This claim is limited to the items listed in the attached inventory. Then I signed it. My phone rang as I pulled out of the parking area. 39, Caleb said. I'm 5 minutes away. Parking is full. I'll park on Walnut. There are cars on both sides. I'll find a space. Greg is moving quickly. Tell him I'm bringing the written claim. I already did. What did he say? He said to bring it to the auction desk. Did he agree to wait? No. Ask him. I tried. Francis interrupted. What did she say? That you were making a false ownership claim. Did Greg respond? He said he'd review whatever you submit. That was all I could reasonably expect. Stay near the desk, I said. Francis told me to leave. Are you leaving? No. It was the first time he'd answered that question without explaining himself. I reached Walnut Street and found cars parked nearly to the corner. People stood near the carriage house entrance holding bidder cards. The auctioneer's voice carried over a portable speaker. I parked 2 blocks away. Caleb called again. 43, I'm walking. I held the envelope against my side. Ren. What? I'm sorry. There wasn't time to ask which part he meant. Stay where Greg can see you, I said. I walked faster. The sidewalk was uneven near Dad's block. My right knee caught once, and I slowed for 3 steps. Then the carriage house came into view. A white auction sign stood by the driveway. Dad's address was printed beneath Greg's business name. People filled the folding chairs inside. More stood along the walls. Frances was near the front in her black dress. Caleb waited beside the auction desk. He saw me first. Greg called Lot 47. 2 workers lifted my shadow box onto the table. Bidding began before I reached the driveway. The price moved from $2,000 to $4,000, then $5,000, then $7,000. I entered the carriage house as a man in the second row raised his card. $8,400, Greg said. Nobody answered his next call. He raised the hammer as I reached the open door. The hammer came down. Sold for $8,400. The man in the second row lowered his bidder card. A few people clapped. I walked to the auction desk and placed my envelope in front of Greg. Before payment or possession transfers, I'm submitting a written ownership claim. Frances stepped between us. She has no claim. Greg looked at me, then at Caleb. You're Renee Dixon? Yes, I was told you were coming. Frances turned toward Caleb. You did this? He asked whether I was bringing paperwork, I said. I'm here now. Greg rested one hand on the shadow box. Hold payment on lot 47, he told the woman at the desk. The buyer stood. Is there a problem? There's a disputed ownership claim. Please remain available. Frances faced the seated bidders. There is no dispute. My husband owned that collection. Several people looked at the catalog in their hands. Greg opened my envelope. Frances reached toward it. He moved the papers away from her. I need to review the claim. She manufactured that paperwork, she said. Her voice carried through the carriage house. Nobody was talking now. Greg looked at her. You told me this matter was resolved. It was. She's upset about the funeral. That's unrelated. Not to her. I kept my hands at my sides. Greg read my written statement first, then he examined the inventory. He checked the second page and returned to the signatures. This copy is signed by you and Wayne Dixon? Yes. Where is his retained copy? It was attached behind the shadow box. Frances gave a short laugh. That's convenient. Caleb stepped forward. I saw her remove it. Frances looked at him. What? Yesterday. You took the paper off the back and put it in your purse. You don't know what that paper was. It had both signatures. You didn't read it. I saw the title. Greg raised one hand. I need one person speaking at a time. Frances pointed toward me. She pressured Wayne into signing things. She treated every family favor like a military transfer. Greg looked down at the inventory. Mrs. Powers, do you have the original document Caleb described? No. Caleb stared at her. You put it in your purse. I don't know where it is now. That isn't what he asked, I said. Greg looked at me. Let her answer. Frances folded her arms. I have papers from my husband's study. I haven't reviewed all of them. Is this inventory among them? Greg asked. I don't know. Did you remove a signed page from the back of this frame? I removed an old note. Where is it? I just told you. I don't know. Greg placed my inventory beside the catalog sheet. The buyer took one step closer. I'd like to know what I bought, he said. You bought Wayne's collection, Frances replied. The man looked at the retirement plaque. Whose name is on that? Frances didn't answer. Greg turned the plaque around. My name was engraved across the front. Lieutenant Colonel Renee Dixon. The buyer looked at me. These are yours? Yes. Frances spoke before he could ask anything else. Wayne inherited some of the medals. Renee used them in a display. That isn't true, I said. You don't know everything your father owned. I know what I was awarded. The buyer bent closer to the glass. Those citations have her name. They could be copies, Frances said. Caleb stared at her. You were at the retirement ceremony. So were a lot of people. You watched her receive them. I watched a ceremony. That doesn't establish ownership. That was the moment Frances committed to the only version she had left. The paperwork was false. The citations were copies. The display had been built from property Dad inherited. She no longer claimed a misunderstanding. Greg picked up my retirement photograph. It showed the shadow box at Carlisle Barracks before Dad took it home. He compared the decoration arrangement to the box on the table. Then he examined the program. This is from the retirement ceremony? Yes. Is there a contact for the protocol office? On the back page, he found the number. Frances stepped closer. You can't call a military post during an auction. I can verify submitted material before transferring a disputed lot. This is absurd. Greg looked toward the bidder. Sir, the sale remains on hold. I haven't paid. Good, please don't. Greg handed the program to the woman at the desk and asked her to dial the protocol office. She used the auction phone and placed the call on speaker. The first person transferred Greg to another office. We waited through 2 rings. A man answered. Carlisle Barracks protocol. Greg introduced himself and gave his Pennsylvania auction license number. I'm reviewing documents connected to a retirement ceremony, he said. I need to confirm whether the archived records are authentic. The officer asked for the retiree's name and year. Lieutenant Colonel Renee Dixon. Retirement in 2024. There was a pause while he checked. People shifted in their folding chairs. Someone near the door whispered, then stopped when Greg looked up. The officer returned. We have the archived ceremony program and retirement citation. Can you confirm the retiree's branch and rank? United States Army, Lieutenant Colonel. And the name on the citation? Renee Dixon. Greg looked at the shadow box. I also have a display photograph showing several decorations. Does the archive include the configuration? Yes. I'm going to describe the arrangement. He read from the inventory. He didn't name every medal. He identified the rouse, the retirement plaque, and the 3 mounted citations. The officer checked each part. That matches the archived ceremony photograph, he said. Frances shook her head. That proves she retired. It doesn't prove she owned what she gave Wayne. The officer heard her. That's correct, he said. Our office can confirm the official records. We don't determine private ownership. Thank you, Greg said. He ended the call. The protocol office hadn't rescued me. It hadn't decided the dispute. It had removed Frances's claim that the service documents and display were manufactured. Greg returned to the inventory. This is the ownership document, he said. Frances stepped toward his table. It's an old family note. It states that the listed items remain Renee Dixon's property. Wayne changed his mind. He couldn't change her ownership by himself. She gave them to him. The signed document says she loaned them for display. She left them in his house for 2 years. That is consistent with the stated display loan. Francis's face reddened. You accepted my consignment. Yes, you cataloged it, based on your warranty. What warranty? Greg reached beneath the desk and removed a stapled agreement. The top page carried Francis's signature. My standard consignment agreement, he said. You signed it Friday. You told me it was routine. It is routine. You never asked for a document on every lamp and chair. I asked whether you had clear title to the consigned property. I'm Wayne's wife. That doesn't establish title to property belonging to his daughter. She pointed at my inventory. You're taking her side because she used her rank. I'm applying the agreement you signed. He turned toward the buyer. Sir, the sale of Lot 47 is void. The man nodded once. I understand. You owe no payment. The lot will not transfer. Greg marked the catalog sheet in red. Then he spoke to the room. The seller has failed to establish clear title to Lot 47. The sale is rescinded. A low sound moved through the chairs. Not applause, just people reacting at once. Francis put one hand on the auction desk. You already sold it. A sale cannot stand when the consignor lacks the right to sell the property. What about my costs? Greg kept his voice level. The agreement makes the consignor responsible for losses and auction expenses caused by a false title warranty. What expenses? Catalog preparation, advertising allocation, staff time, and costs connected to the voided transaction. You're charging me? Yes. How much? My office will provide the itemized assessment. She looked around the carriage house. People who had believed her 5 minutes earlier were now reading the catalog description again. Greg continued, the remaining undocumented lots under this consignment are suspended. Francis turned back toward him. You can't stop my entire auction. I'm suspending items until you document ownership. This is my house. The location isn't the issue. The furniture is mine. Then provide records or other reasonable proof. My husband just died. I understand. You chose the auction date. Her hand dropped from the desk. Some lots had already sold. Greg instructed his staff to hold those transfers until their status was reviewed. The remaining bidders began speaking among themselves. Francis pointed toward me. She's claiming everything now. No, I said. Greg looked at my written statement. Your claim says it is limited to the inventory. Yes. What about other items in the house or carriage house? I'm not claiming them. Caleb moved beside me. What about Dad's desk and tools? He asked quietly. They weren't mine. You don't know whether he wanted them sold. No, I don't. I looked at Greg. I'm not asking you to stop property that is genuinely Francis's. Francis gave a bitter laugh. How generous. It isn't generosity, it's scope. Greg nodded to one of his workers. Bring Lot 47 to the desk. The worker lifted the shadow box carefully. Another brought the plaque and citation copies. Greg compared each item to the inventory. Do these account for everything listed? He asked. I checked one line at a time. The shadow box was intact. The 3 citations were present. The plaque had a light scratch near the bottom, but it was there. Yes, Greg wrote on a release form. I'm returning the disputed property to the documented owner. Sign here to acknowledge receipt. I read the form before signing. Francis watched me. You planned this, she said. No. You waited until the hammer fell. I arrived while it was falling. You could have handled this privately. I tried. You wanted an audience. You scheduled the audience. She looked toward Caleb. He didn't look away this time. Greg turned the shadow box toward me. I placed both hands around the frame. It was heavier than I remembered. The buyer stepped aside to give me room. I'm sorry, he said. I believe the catalog. I know. That was the belief Greg's process had changed. The buyer hadn't tried to take my service. He trusted a description backed by a signed consignment. Now he knew it was false. Greg handed me the plaque and documents. "The auction office will retain copies of your claim," he said. "That's fine." Frances stood beside the suspended lots with her signed agreement open in front of her. I carried the shadow box out of the carriage house. Behind me, Greg began identifying which remaining items required ownership documentation. Caleb followed me into the driveway. "Ren," he said, "wait." I stopped beside my car. Caleb reached for the plaque. "Let me carry something." The words were almost the same as Dad's after my retirement ceremony. I handed him the plaque and citations. We walked toward my car without speaking. When we reached it, I unlocked the back door and placed the shadow box across the seat. Caleb set the plaque beside it. "I should have listened," he said. I adjusted the seatbelt around the frame. "You did listen." "I mean earlier." I closed the door. He stood with his hands in his pockets. I kept telling myself I was protecting the funeral. "You were protecting yourself from an argument." "I know." This time, the words sounded different. He looked toward the carriage house. People were coming out in small groups. Some carried catalogs. Others stood near their cars talking. "Every time she changed something, I asked you to accept it," he said. "Yes." I thought that made me neutral. It didn't. He nodded. "I helped her. You made it easier. That's what I mean." I leaned against the car. "An apology doesn't fix that today. I know. You need to stop saying you know and show me." He looked down. "What do you want me to do? Don't ask me to design your apology." "That's fair." Behind him, Frances came down the driveway. She walked quickly, holding the consignment agreement. "You need to tell Greg this was a family misunderstanding," she said. I moved away from the car. "It wasn't. He's suspending everything. That's between you and Greg. You caused it. Your warranty caused it. I relied on what Wayne told me. Then document that for Greg. You know I can't document private conversations. That's the problem." She looked at Caleb. "Tell her." He didn't move. "Tell her what?" he asked. "That she made her point. She recovered her property. She destroyed the auction." "No." "Greg suspended it. Because of her. Because you listed something you didn't own." Frances stared at him. "So this is what you're doing now?" "I'm saying what happened. You think she'll forgive you if you turn on me? This isn't about forgiveness." Her eyes moved back to me. "I'll keep your place at the funeral if you correct this." "My place?" "The family seating, the gathering afterward. Those things were already mine until you attached conditions. It is my home. The service isn't. I can tell people you aren't welcome. You can tell them whatever you choose. I'm offering you a way to stop this." "No, you're offering access in exchange for a lie." She lowered her voice. "Tell people Greg overreacted." He followed the agreement. "Tell them the description was a mistake. You repeated it after you knew it was false." Her face tightened. "Then don't come to my house after the burial." "I won't." She seemed surprised. "You'd miss your father's gathering over this?" "The gathering is yours. The funeral is Dad's. You always have to make distinctions." "Yes. They don't make you kind. They make me clear." Greg called Frances from the carriage house door. He held a clipboard and several lot sheets. She turned away from us. "This isn't over," she said. "For future contact, it has to be honest and it can't have conditions. I don't need rules from you. Then don't contact me." She walked back toward Greg. Caleb watched her go. "She won't apologize," he said. "I didn't expect her to." "What happens now? I take my property home. I meant with us. I don't know." He nodded slowly. That was the correct answer. Nothing in the carriage house had repaired years of avoidance. He helped me secure the shadow box with a second seatbelt. Then he walked back to the auction. I drove home. The frame rode behind me instead of in the trunk. Every few minutes I checked it in the mirror. At my house, I carried it inside alone. I didn't put it on the dining room wall. I set it on the table and checked the glass, backing, and mounts. The decorations hadn't moved. The citations were intact. The scratch on the plaque was shallow. Dad's original inventory wasn't attached. I emailed Greg. The signed original retained behind the frame was removed by the consignor in front of a witness. Please note that it was not returned with the property. His response came an hour later, noted in the auction file. That was all he could do. Later that afternoon, Greg sent a formal notice to Francis and copied me only on the portion related to my claim. The sale remained void. The buyer owed nothing. Auction costs caused by the title failure were assessed to Francis under her agreement. Her remaining consignments would stay suspended until she provided ownership documentation. There was no dramatic fine. No police arrived. Nobody took the house away. Francis had to pay the costs she'd created, and she could no longer use her signature alone to move the remaining lots. That was proportionate. The man who had bid on my shadow box sent a message through Greg. He said he collected military items and had believed the catalog description. I replied that I understood. I didn't blame him. He had stopped when the sale was voided. He never touched the box. By evening, the auction page displayed a short notice that several lots were unavailable pending documentation. It didn't name Francis. It didn't name me. People from the auction still talked. The neighbor, who had asked me to give Francis grace, sent another message. She wrote, "I didn't know the medals were yours." I answered, "They were documented as a display loan." Nothing more. I didn't send the inventory. I didn't send pictures of Francis at the auction. I didn't need the whole street to choose sides. At 7, Caleb came to my house. He remained on the porch until I opened the door. "I went to the funeral home," he said. "What for?" "To take Dad's suit." He held up a new program proof. "What changed?" "Look." The obituary still named both of us. Beneath the family photograph, the caption identified me as Dad's daughter and a retired Army lieutenant colonel. It identified Caleb as his son. The wording was simple. It didn't turn Dad's funeral into my retirement ceremony. "The picture is back," I said. I asked them to use it on the memory page. Francis canceled the photographs. I told her I wouldn't approve a program that erased one of Dad's children. What did she say? A lot. And then? She agreed to one page. I read the caption again. "Did you write this?" I gave them the facts. They wrote it. "Thank you." He looked relieved, but I wasn't finished. "Why did you do it?" "Because Dad asked for the picture. That's part of it." He shifted his weight. "Because I kept treating your place like something Francis could give or take." I waited. "She can control her house," he said. "She can't change who Dad's children are." That was an action and an answer. I stepped aside. "You can come in." He entered and stopped when he saw the shadow box on the dining table. For a while, he looked at it without speaking. "I remember that ceremony," he said. "You'd better." My shoes were soaked. "You refused to carry an umbrella. It was turning inside out. It was still raining." He smiled briefly. Then he saw the empty tape marks on the back of the frame. "She took the original," he said. "Yes." "I'll ask for it." "No." "Why not?" "Because she'll turn you into a messenger again. But it belongs with the records. I have my signed duplicate." He looked at the locked drawer in my work desk. "You really had another one?" "Yes." "She didn't know?" "No, neither did I. You didn't need to know until today." He accepted that without arguing. "I'm going back to the house," he said. "I need clothes for the funeral. Do you live there now?" "No, I just haven't gone home." "Go home tonight. Francis shouldn't be alone. That's your decision." "You think I'm doing it again?" "I think you have to decide what help looks like when someone uses it to avoid accountability." He folded the program once. "I don't want to abandon her. I didn't ask you to." "What would you do?" "I'd stop carrying messages. I'd stop defending things I knew were wrong. I'd still bring food if she needed food." He looked toward the shadow box. "That sounds harder." "It is." Before leaving, he placed the folded program beside the plaque. "I'll see you Saturday," he said, "at the service. Sit with me. Has Frances agreed?" "I'm not asking her. That may cause another scene. Then she can choose whether to make one." He sounded like me. I wasn't sure how I felt about that yet. The next 2 days were quiet. Greg's auction staff removed the signs from Walnut Street. Frances submitted documents for some household items and withdrew others. The remaining sale did not resume before the funeral. She never returned Dad's signed original. She didn't contact me directly. On Friday evening, Caleb sent a photograph of 2 chairs near the front of the funeral chapel. A folded program rested on each seat. He wrote, "One is yours." I replied, "I'll be there." Saturday morning, I wore a dark gray suit. My uniform stayed in its garment bag. At the funeral home, Frances stood near Dad's casket greeting people. She saw me enter but didn't move. Caleb walked across the lobby. He didn't ask whether Frances had given permission. He took my coat and led me to the chair beside his. The printed program named us both correctly. I sat down, placed it in my lap, and waited for my father's funeral to begin. The service started on time. There were no family remarks. The slideshow screen remained dark. Dad's retirement picture appeared only in the printed program. It was enough. The funeral director read the obituary. He named Caleb and me as Dad's children. Frances sat on Caleb's other side. She kept her hands folded in her lap. When the reading ended, she looked toward me once. I didn't know what she expected to see. I looked at Dad. After the service, people formed a line near the casket. Several stopped to speak with Frances. Others came to Caleb and me. Nobody mentioned the auction to me. One man started to. I heard there was some trouble with Wayne's things. "Today is about Dad," I said. He nodded and moved on. Frances heard the exchange. She didn't thank me. I didn't need her to. At the cemetery, Caleb stood beside me. The wind kept lifting the corner of his program. Dad was buried near my mother, where he'd wanted. There were no military honors, no borrowed ceremony, no attempt to turn his support for veterans into service he hadn't performed. It was a simple burial for a civilian man from Carlisle. That was accurate, too. When it ended, Frances invited people to the house on Walnut Street. She didn't invite me. Caleb waited beside my car. "Are you going?" I asked. "For a little while." "You should. You're okay driving?" "Yes. I can leave early. Don't leave on my account." He looked toward Frances's car. "I'm not going to ask you to come." "Thank you." I told her I wouldn't. That was the first test after the funeral. He kept my boundary even when respecting it made him uncomfortable. Before he left, he handed me his folded pages. "What are these?" "What I wrote for Dad." "You want me to read them?" "Yes." "Do you want them back?" "No. Keep them with the program." At home, I changed clothes and made tea. Then I read Caleb's remarks. They weren't polished. That made them sound like him. He wrote about Dad teaching us to change a tire in the rain. He wrote about the chicken salad sandwiches and the pile of celery left on the plate. He wrote that Dad was proud of both his children, even when he didn't always say it clearly. The last line was crossed out twice. I'm sorry I waited until now to say this for him. I folded the pages and placed them inside the funeral program. Caleb didn't call that evening. He didn't send updates from Frances's gathering either. That mattered. For years, he'd carried information between us. He softened her words before bringing them to me. Then he carried my reaction back to her. That night, he stopped. 3 days later, Greg emailed the final property release. My claim was closed because the listed items had been returned. The sale remained void. Frances's assessment was due under the consignment agreement. Her other lots stayed suspended until she documented ownership. A week later, Greg's website showed a smaller Walnut Street sale. The description no longer called it the Dixon Estate. It listed specific household goods under Frances's name. My property wasn't mentioned. Some items from Dad's study never returned to the catalog. I didn't ask why. They weren't mine. Frances paid the auction assessment. Greg confirmed only that her account was settled. That closed my obligation to him. There was no lawsuit. I didn't ask for damages. The shadow box had a small scratch, and I could live with it. The buyer never contacted me again. Caleb came over the next Wednesday at noon. He brought chicken salad sandwiches. "Did you check for celery?" I asked. "No. You learn nothing from Dad." He opened one sandwich and inspected it. There was celery. He picked out 3 pieces and placed them on his napkin. I'm honoring him. We ate at my dining table with the shadow box resting against the far wall. Caleb looked at it several times. You're not hanging it? I haven't decided where. You have an empty wall. It's empty on purpose. He smiled. Then he reached into his jacket and removed a folded sheet inside a plastic sleeve. Dad's original inventory. Where did you get that? Francis gave it to me. When? That morning. Why didn't you call? I wanted to bring it myself. I opened the sleeve. The painter's tape was still attached to the corners. Dad's signature matched my duplicate. Did she say anything? She said Greg told her the paper should have been returned with the property. That's all? She said she didn't agree with it, but she returned it. Yes. It wasn't an apology. It was compliance after the consequence. That was the most Francis was willing to offer. I put the original beside my duplicate. What did you say to her? I asked. I told her I wouldn't carry any more messages. How did she take that? Badly. And then I went home. To your own house? Yes. That was the second test. He hadn't abandoned Francis. He still called to check on her. He helped her document a few items for the smaller sale. He stopped treating her anger like an emergency everyone else had to solve. Our Wednesday lunches continued. Sometimes we met at Market Cross. Sometimes he brought food to my house. He didn't cancel when Francis called. He answered, dealt with the question, and returned to the conversation. Once she asked him to tell me I was welcome at her house if I agreed never to discuss the auction. He didn't pass that offer along. He told her, call Renee yourself if you want contact. Then he told me only because I asked whether Francis had mentioned Dad's remaining papers. That was a condition, he said, so I didn't bring it to you. Good. You're not angry I kept it from you? No. You weren't hiding information about Dad. You refused to deliver a demand. He nodded. He was learning the difference. About a month after the funeral, Francis emailed me directly. I found 2 photographs that appear to belong to you. May I mail them? There was no accusation, no condition. I replied with my address, though she already had it. The photographs arrived 4 days later. One showed Dad at my retirement reception. The other showed the 3 of us outside the barracks. Francis included no note. I sent one message, received, thank you. That was the full conversation. 2 weeks later, she called. I let it ring before answering. I need the veterans' breakfast records, she said. Which records? Wayne's donation history. I sent the public affiliations before the funeral. I need amounts. Why? For his tax files. Those receipts were returned to Dad. I can't find them. I don't have copies. She sighed. You always kept copies. Not of his private receipts. You could help me look. Is this a request to come to the house? Yes. Are there conditions? What does that mean? It means exactly what it meant before. No. There are no conditions. I agreed to 1 hour the next afternoon. Caleb wasn't present. I didn't ask him to be. Francis let me through the back door. The boxes were gone from the kitchen. Dad's coffee maker wasn't back. We searched the study together. She opened drawers while I checked the folders on the shelves. We found the receipts in a brown envelope behind Dad's tax forms. I handed it to her. She looked inside. Thank you. You're welcome. Neither of us mentioned the auction. That wasn't reconciliation. It was one honest request, one limited visit, and no trade attached. When the hour ended, I left. She didn't ask me to stay. I didn't need her to. Our contact remained occasional after that. Some messages were direct. Some still carried the old edge. When she added a condition, I declined. When she asked a clear question, I answered if I could. Caleb and I had harder work. He apologized more than once. I stopped him the 3rd time. I heard you, I said. Keep doing what you're doing. So he did. He sent plans before changing them. He corrected family information without waiting for me. He came to lunch when he said he would. One Wednesday, he brought a small wall-mounting kit. For the shadow box, he said, I already have hardware. Dad's hooks are still in the study. Those can stay there. Then where are you putting it? I'm keeping it here for now. He looked at the dining table. You use this table. I can move it when I need the space. He didn't push. That was another change. The first time we had dinner there, I moved the shadow box to the sideboard. Afterward, Caleb helped clear the plates, then returned it to the table without being asked. He placed the folded funeral program beside it. If this story moved you, subscribe, and let me know where you are watching from. That evening, after Caleb left, I wiped the glass with a soft cloth. I opened the back and placed Dad's original inventory inside. My duplicate returned to the locked drawer. Then I checked each mount and closed the frame. The house was quiet. I could hear traffic from the main road and the low hum of my refrigerator. Dad's program had opened slightly, so I folded it along the same crease Caleb had made at the funeral. I didn't hang the display above the television. I didn't return it to Walnut Street. I left it where I could see it without anyone else explaining what it meant. My restored shadow box sat beside Wayne's folded funeral program on my dining table.